Notice is hereby given of the organization meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, June 11th, 2013, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. Notice has also been duly provided to the public that this meeting shall constitute a public hearing for the purposes of the currently proposed 5-year superintendent contract with Dr. Dolan. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, June 7, 2013, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can we do roll call?
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler? Ann Carey? Mark Friedman?
Here.
Brendan Galligan?
Here.
Roseanne Kerstead?
Yes.
Ginny Lights? Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Here. All right, Gretchen, could you lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. Brendan, anything on your end?
Yeah, this is an announcement regarding the last day of school. Just a reminder, the last day of school for students in grades 6 through 12 is Thursday, June 20th, with June 19th and the 20th being 4-hour sessions. The last day of school for students in grades K through 5 is Friday, June 21st, with June 19th, 20th, and 21st all being 4-hour sessions.
Thank you.
I have one from Edison Intermediate. Edison Intermediate School in Westfield recently held a mix-it-up lunch at the school in the school's cafeteria. The student group called Teens Learning Respect and Compassion organized the event with the school's counselors. In November, they asked Edison students to fill out a questionnaire about the school climate. In that survey, students identified that the cafeteria is the place where divisions among students are clearly drawn. Mix It Up at Lunch Day was created for the 6th grade class to move out of their comfort zones and connect with someone new over lunch. In addition to eating lunch together, the 6th graders and their peer leaders interacted in fun activities.
Thank you.
I have 2 announcements. The first one is Westfield High School Fine Arts. Westfield High School has once again been recognized for achievements at the annual Paper Mill Playhouse Rising Star Awards. The awards for the school's 2013 spring production, Bat Boy the Musical, included Outstanding Actor in a Leading Role, Matthew D. Lynn, Student Achievement Award, Film Computer Animation, Chris Sabadio, Student Achievement Award, Stage Manager, Lydia Okenda. This is the 3rd consecutive year that the Westfield High School Stage Manager has received this award. And Tiffany & Company Rising Star Award Scholarship, Isabel Smelkinson. Congratulations to everyone. And on the in the athletics area, congratulations to our baseball team who won the state sectional title. We applaud your efforts and your team spirit. More congratulations for Peter Fagan, who won the pole vault at the state sectional meet. At the county level, we applaud our softball team, who won the Union County tournament. And shortly following our last Board of Education meeting, Westfield High School senior and lacrosse player Elizabeth Cusick, who will be attending Stanford University in the fall, was selected as the Star Ledger Athlete of the Week. The Ledger wrote, "Senior midfielder Elizabeth Cusick is the leading scorer for one of the hottest teams in the state. Cusick has 80 goals this season." Congratulations.
The following 4 candidates have submitted their applications for the 3 seats on the Board of Education. Each seat represents a 3-year term. The election will take place on Tuesday, November 5th, 2013. The candidates include incumbents Brendan Galligan, Ginny Lights, and Mitch Slater, and challenger Jonathan Blitt.
Okay, I'll take Lucy's. Okay, first in the elementary school. Congratulations to the Odyssey, the Mind teams who competed in the World Finals at Michigan State University. There were over 800 teams from over 30 states and 13 countries, with opening and closing ceremonies that was webcast worldwide. Westfield team members, Omai Edekar, Julia Tompkins, Madeline Lerner, Natalie Lee, Eric Palia, and Mira Maida captured 4th place out of 47 teams.
Wow.
Our other Westfield team finished 19th out of 51. Westfield students included Noah Dengler, Kurt Hu, Vivian Jekyll, Aiden Kilborn, Nathan Lamb, Aiden Orr, and Catherine Orr. What a wonderful experience for these gifted students and a real terrific honor for our district. So congratulations, first of all. Not done yet. More congratulations. So more than 200 students and 15 teachers at McKinley Elementary School hit the dance floor recently in the fight against pediatric cancer at the school's 2nd annual Minithon Dance-a-thon, raising $8,300 to benefit the Karen Research Fund. Also at McKinley, 5th graders led by music teacher Christina Tulios sang the national anthem at the Somerset Patriots game. About 300 members of the McKinley community attended the game as part of a school-wide family outing. And over at Wilson School, congratulations to, I hope I pronounce this right, Trista Nwoki, 2nd grade teacher at Wilson School, who received recertification from the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. She's only one of 6 teachers in New Jersey who received this recertification and was one of 25 in her initial certification class 10 years ago. She completed a portfolio which included 10 assessment exercises, which reflected effective teaching as outlined by the teaching standards created by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And she was invited to attend a recognition dinner in Trenton this past May. So congratulations to Trista.
All right, the next Board of Education meeting will be held Monday, June 24th. Westfield High School's graduation ceremony will be held that Tuesday, June 25th, beginning at 6 p.m. We look forward to that special evening in which we honor our graduating seniors. My next announcement is a very special announcement. I'd like to do it from the podium. Tonight, we honor 5 outstanding secondary school teachers who all have very much in common. In every letter of nomination, these teachers were commended for how much they care about their students and how hard they strive to reach every single one of them. Phrases like these were a common thread in the nominations on their behalf. Going the extra mile. Helping each student be the best he or she can be. Really connects with the students. Makes the subject matter fun. Children learn to respect the subject being taught. Keeps the material fresh and exciting. We always know what is expected of us. Makes students feel important in the classroom. Excellent role model. It is clear that these teachers excel in their profession and are very deserving of the awards that you have received this spring. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to present each of you with a resolution. First, our intermediate school teachers. Pam Friedman from Roosevelt Intermediate School. If you could come on up. I'd like to read this resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Pamela Friedman, Intermediate School Teacher of the Year, 2012-2013. Whereas the Optimist Club of Westfield, a supporter of schools and children in the community for many years, has established an annual award for outstanding teaching in the intermediate schools. And whereas this award is a fitting tribute to the importance of teaching in the intermediate grades and the nobility of the teaching profession. And whereas Pamela Friedman, a dedicated, caring, and creative technology teacher at Roosevelt Intermediate School since 2004, has been awarded the 16th Intermediate School Outstanding Teacher Award for outstanding teaching, interest in children, and continued pursuit of professional growth. And whereas the nominations received on behalf of Pamela Friedman expressed appreciation for the motivation, dedication, and enriching experiences she continually provides her students. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly expresses appreciation to the Optimist Club of Westfield for establishing this award, and that this Board of Education sincerely congratulates Pamela Friedman, representing Roosevelt Intermediate School, for receiving the 2013 Outstanding Teacher Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment. And that this resolution be presented to Pamela Friedman on June 11, 2013, and that a copy of this formal resolution become a part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education.
On behalf of the Roosevelt PTSO, we want to thank you for all that you do. You were wonderful to the kids, and we really appreciate it. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the Optimist Club and the Board of Education for sponsoring this yearly event. I think it's a great opportunity for our teachers to be recognized, and even the teachers who don't win, they always say to me, Stu, where are the letters? They always want to read what the students have to say about them. And so I just want to thank the board and thank the Optimist Club for presenting this opportunity for our teachers. I could sit here and tell you a lot about Pam, but I know there are a lot of people on here, so I just want to read an unsolicited letter, and I think it captures the essence of what Pam is about as a teacher. And I pat myself on the back because she was my first hire about 9 years ago, and I've been able to hold on to her. But a student wrote Pam this letter, not even knowing that she had won. And this takes me just a couple of minutes. It said, Dear Miss Friedman, remember me? Ross Tucker here with a long overdue email. I just graduated from Duke University on May 12th with a major in visual and media studies and certificates in information science and marketing. Now that I have graduated, I feel compelled to give gratitude where it is due. Over the past 4 years, I was fortunate enough to be able to combine my interest in multimedia arts with my knack for entrepreneurship into a unique program at school. I graduated cum laude with high distinction in my department. Looking back, it is clear that what kept me motivated was that I was charged by what I was doing. Though the work in multimedia creative was grueling at times, demanding meticulous attention to detail, I was constantly reminded of when I developed such interest in visual storytelling and design. It was in your class. I'm writing to thank you for providing such a great course experience that unquestionably shaped my future and in the future of my academic experiences. Visual and media studies is one of the least populated majors at Duke. Plenty of kids take the economic route so they can get jobs on Wall Street. But when I discovered the program, the resources, and like-minded professors, I knew that this was the obvious choice. I've created websites, promotional videos, marketing campaigns, you name it. You can take a look at some of my work on my web portfolio. A seed was planted in your class that made selecting creative projects, whether academic or extracurricular, effortless. I remember pursuing an after-school program in Photoshop in the same room as our course at Roosevelt. Most students do not sit down with that program until college. Only in my Photoshop course at Duke did I realize how fortunate I was to have the technical foundation from your class. Middle school helped. My insatiable appetite for design and creative has also guided my professional choice. In September, I will begin full-time as a product marketing manager at Google in Mountain View, California. I was able to intern at Google last summer for their music team, so I'm looking forward to returning to San Francisco for the full-time role. Even though some members of the fraternity call me an arts and crafts major, I like to think that having Google to show for it is a testament to my skills. Mrs. Friedman, thank you again for influencing me and providing education in my web multimedia design to future generations of Blue Devils. I mean that when I say devils. Creative projects certainly lend themselves to being a free spirit. I think that captures the essence of the type of teacher Pam Friedman is, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I do remember that class. That was my first class. Good evening. I would like to thank the Optimist Club and the Westfield Board of Education for this distinguished honor. I am both overwhelmed and humbled that I have been chosen as Roosevelt School's Teacher of the Year. I always wanted to be a teacher. From the time I was a little girl, one of my favorite places to be was in school. I loved the first day. I loved getting that little desk with the cubbies on each side, and you'd have that, if you're old enough to remember, a huge box of 36 Crayola crayons, and nothing was missing and nothing was broken. But most of all, I loved my teachers. And I remember sitting at my desk looking up at them and thinking, that's what I want to do. So when I got my first position as a teacher, it seemed more like a dream come true to me. My first job was as a kindergarten teacher. Now, back in the 1980s, there was a very popular book called Everything I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. So for tonight, I'm going to amend that to say, everything I learned about being a teacher, I learned teaching kindergarten. About a month after I started teaching, I remember I was sitting on the carpet with a group of kids, and a little girl came running over to me. Out of breath, she had something she had to say, and she couldn't wait. So she comes running over, she stopped short in front of me, and she says, "Mom!" And then she stopped and realized her mistake, and we both kind of laughed, and I gave her a little hug, and we forgot about it. But the fact is that it happened a lot. It happened to almost all the children. They would accidentally call me Mom. So I started to think about, why would that be? At first I thought, well, that's the name you say the most, especially when you're 5. But the more I reflected on it, the more I realized that it was something more than that. You see, at home, Mom represents your security, the person who cares about you, the person you feel safe with, the person who loves you. And I think at school, I was that person. And so the lesson I learned that year, the first lesson I learned was this. In order for optimal learning to take place, a child has to feel safe in a classroom. They have to feel that when they walk in that room, their teacher cares about them and only wants what's best for them. And it applies today to my middle school students exactly the same way it applied for my 5-year-olds. I learned a lot of lessons that year, but I think the one that stayed with me the most is this. As teachers, we need to teach the whole child, not just their brain, but their heart. And so I think, and I know we all do this, all teachers, we try to teach our students to also be good human beings, to be kind to each other, to look out for one another, and to take care of the world around us. Because as Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And in order for our children to be successful, we have to teach all parts of them. And the success that our children will have will make our world better for not just them, but for all of us. And now I'd just like to take a moment to say a few thank yous. First, I'd like to thank my colleagues at Roosevelt School. The Roosevelt motto states that we are a family of learners. And we are that. We are a family. And I feel very blessed every day to work with such a dedicated and remarkable group of teachers. But there's a reason why Roosevelt School is such a great place. And the reason for that is Mr. Stuart Carey over there. Stu Carey is that perfect blend of character traits that make a great leader. I'm going to make sure I don't forget one thing I want to say about him. He is compassionate. He is supportive. He's intelligent. He's trustworthy. And most of all, he's very humble. And just like a teacher needs to create a classroom where people feel happy and safe, Stu Carey's created a school where every single teacher has the same purpose. And that's always to do what's best for our kids. And finally, I want to thank my family who's here with me tonight. But I want to thank especially my 3 children. I know it wasn't always easy having a working mom, but you have never, ever complained. My son Jonathan just graduated cum laude from College of New Jersey, started his very first job yesterday, and you'll notice he's not here. He's still working. So hi, Jonathan. And I'm very, very proud of him. But my 2 daughters, Allison and Jessica, are here with me tonight. I hope you know how happy it makes me that you've both decided to become teachers. I hope that in just some small way, the joy that I've always shown you in being a teacher is partly what encouraged you to go into this profession. And after spending countless times in both of your classrooms, I know that you are both amazing teachers, and someday I'm going to be sitting there watching you get your Teacher of the Year awards. And finally, just one more big thank you to the Optimist Club and Board of Ed for this honor. To receive an award for doing something that you love so much is tremendously rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Debbie Visos from Edison Intermediate School. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Debbie Visos, Intermediate School Teacher of the Year, 2012-2013. Whereas the Optimist Club of Westfield, a supporter of schools and children in the community for many years, has established an annual award for outstanding teaching in the intermediate schools, and whereas this award is a fitting tribute to the importance of teaching in the intermediate grades and the nobility of the teaching profession, and whereas Debbie Visos, a dedicated language arts teacher at Edison Intermediate School, who since 1997 continues to challenge, engage, and support her students, has been awarded the 16th Annual Intermediate School Outstanding Teacher Award for outstanding teaching, interest in children, and continued pursuit of professional growth. And whereas the nominations received on behalf of Debbie Visos expressed appreciation for the innovation, expertise, tireless energy, and dedication she consistently demonstrates to her students, now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly expresses appreciation to the Optimist Club of Westfield for establishing this award, and that this Board of Education sincerely congratulates Debbie Visos, representing Edison Intermediate School, for receiving the 2013 Outstanding Teacher Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment, and that this resolution be presented on June 11, 2013, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes a part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education.
behalf of the PTSO, these flowers, I'd like to say a couple of things. I've been co-president of PTSO now for 3 years at Edison, so I have a lot of experience of what goes on at Edison. And my daughter was taught also by Mrs. Visos. So I'm very familiar with her teaching ability. She's a wonderful teacher. In addition to that, she does a lot of work outside of her teaching. You know, a lot of our teachers do that. She's outstanding in the kind of work she does with the students outside their regular time. Secondly, what I have discovered very early on was that Mrs. Visos is the go-to person at Jefferson. If you want something done at Jefferson, I beg your pardon, Edison, there are a few people you can see, go to, but Mrs. Visos is definitely one of those. She is heavily involved in administration in different ways, particularly in technology. And I think if we ever had a position that was vice principal, Mrs. Visos would be a wonderful position. She's certainly, in my opinion, an extremely deserving candidate for this award, and I congratulate you.
Good evening. I'm Matt Bolton. I'm the principal of Edison Intermediate School. I'd like to thank the Westfield Optimist Club for providing this recognition to our district's middle school teachers. It is a truly important award that annually is bestowed upon really important people. I would also like to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Dolan for allowing us to recognize these teachers this evening. Debbie Visos has taught language arts at Edison School for 15 years. She's taught in the 7th grade for 13 of those years. This is my first year in the role of Edison School principal. When beginning a principalship in a new school, one always searches for barometers. A barometer is an instrument that measures the atmospheric pressure. In a school setting, a barometer is a person who lets you as a leader know whether or not you're charting the right course. They let you know when the atmospheric pressure within the school is beginning to rise. In a school, a barometer is a person who's been around for a while. They know the staff, they know the culture, and they are trusted. Finding a barometer is easy, especially this year, because a good barometer is a person that colleagues look to for advice and counsel. They're a person that I can trust, and they are constantly making right decisions on behalf of their students. In my first year at Edison, I'm happy to say that Debbie Visos has served as my barometer. She's also served as the instructional barometer to over 125 of her students. Debbie embodies the character of Edison School. She's constantly moving, whether she's chasing down a student to provide extra help, grading a stack of over 125 essays, or helping a colleague with a major computer problem. She was always on the move and always has a smile on her bright red face. So I am incredibly proud to say that Mrs. Debbie Visos is Edison School's Teacher of the Year for 2013. And just to demonstrate some of the outstanding work she does, we've invited a couple of her students to come and speak on her behalf. So we have a couple of students. We have Joe Lopino. Joe, you ready? Come on up. This is your turn. We also have Olivia Meyer and Natalie Lopino. Natalie is in the 8th grade chorus, and she has a concert tonight. When I asked her to speak on behalf of Mrs. Visos, she said, but I have the 8th grade chorus concert. And I said, well, it's okay. You know, you can read whatever you want to write about her to her tomorrow. And she said, no, I have to go. So I'm going to do the chorus concert. I'm going to make it there by 8. And then I'm going to speak on behalf of Mrs. Visos, and then I'm going to go back for Broadway Singers. So we're going to see if she gets here. So we're going to start with Joe.
Hello, my name is Joe Lopino, and I'm a 7th grader at Edison Intermediate School. Up until this year, language arts was my least favorite subject, but this year, that all changed. Although it still isn't my favorite subject, it is definitely up there in my favorite school subjects. The main reason for my opinion change is because of my teacher, Mrs. Visos. She has had a huge influence on me. My new hope for my future dream job has changed to becoming a sports reporter because of my newfound confidence to write. With that being said, Mrs. Visos is changing my life, so to speak. She is always very encouraging. I don't have the greatest self-confidence, but once I'm in her classroom learning about poetic devices, taking a test, or just asking her for help on my memoir, I feel like I can do anything. Thanks to Mrs. Visos, I'm no longer a Debbie Downer, meaning I am less negative and more confident in my abilities. Thank you, Mrs. Visos.
I'm going to ask Olivia to come up and read what she wrote. Olivia and Natalie are pretty connected, right, in their writing. So they wrote something together, and then they highlighted in color the parts that each one of them would read. So if you would indulge us, since Natalie's not here right now, Olivia's going to read her parts, and if Natalie shows up later, could we jump up?
Absolutely.
Sure. Great.
Hi, I'm Olivia, and I'm an 8th grader who was fortunate enough to have Ms. Visos last year. And me and Natalie just wanted to express our gratitude. She's on her way. Towards Ms. Visos. We just wanted to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for making language arts enjoyable, not only for the 3 of us, but for all your past students. We know that you've had a myriad of students over the years, and we learned that word of the day word from you, Ms. Visos. On one hand, you taught us key skills to progress in our future LA classes. On the other hand, you provided not only a learning environment, but a place we look forward to coming to every 8th period. You've always had the student's best interest at heart, and you were always there to help a student who was struggling. And I think we can speak on the behalf of all your past and present students. Okay. When we say we truly appreciate your dedication and owe a huge thank you. Okay. Language arts was never my strong point. I always had trouble with spelling and punctuation, and was never good at essays either. A big portion of language arts in 7th grade, we learned about properly constructing an essay, starting with an attention-grabbing hook and ending with a question or statement leaving the reader reflecting on your position. In addition, Mrs. Visos always took the time to use different methods of teaching, such as songs, riddles, dances, to help us better understand the concept, and trust me, it worked. I can still remember some of those essays' dance moves. All in all, in my heart, I will not only remember Mrs. Visos as a memorable and talented teacher, but as a full-hearted, caring person that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Even though language arts is not my favorite subject, I wish I was in your class. It is so sad to know next year I will not be able to annoy you every 3rd period. That is what I look forward to this year, talking outside of your room, even though Mr. Varley was waiting for me half the time. I know that I will continue to utilize the key points you gave me throughout my high school years. I am so lucky to have had you last year. You really made me smile before I finished my day. 8th period was even better with my, as you call it, partner in crime, Olivia. I know that in the future if I have any language arts related problems, your door is always open. The memories will always stick with me, from Aiden's ostrich call to homie V's. You are a limitless inspiration and made my middle school experience all that more memorable. Thank you for everything. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to express how much we appreciate you. You truly deserve Teacher of the Year. You earned it, Mrs. Visos.
Thank you, Westfield Board of Education, Dr. Dolan, and the Optimist Club for this great honor. Those of you who know me and know me well know that speaking in public and being the center of attention is not something that makes me very comfortable. So I'm going to share this attention with those who also deserve to be up here with me. If you were all 7th graders, this would be a lot easier for me. Ray Bradbury quotes, "Love what you do and do what you love." This sums up why I became a teacher. I love being around children and watching them discover and learn. I will admit that unlike Pam, at 5, I did not know that I wanted to be a teacher. Maybe not even at 10. I wanted to be an ice cream salesperson. It looked like a fun job. So I would like to thank my parents for continuing to challenge that dream in the following years and help to put me on the right path. I have to say that having parents and an older sister who are teachers helped to guide my decision. Also sharing this attention with me should be my husband and my children. I am blessed that they support me, even when that means that my weekends are spent grading papers. When I started in Westfield, I had a great mentor, Carrie Webster, and a wonderful department supervisor, Barbara Ball. They were my role models and inspired me through the years and still do. Alongside these two is the staff at Edison. They are like a second family to me, and I enjoy working with each and every one of them. Mark Lazaro, my 7th grade language arts partner, truly deserves some of this attention as well, and a lot of my thanks. Being able to brainstorm, plan, and on occasion argue with Mark has truly impacted my teaching. I also need to thank my current administrators, Mr. Bolton and Mr. Dulks, who challenge and encourage me to do what is best for my students every single second they are in my classroom. They provide direction and reflection that are crucial in education. Last but certainly not least, I need to share some of this attention with the Westfield parents and students. The parents that I have had the pleasure of working with over the years have been thankful and encouraging. That thanks and encouragement goes a long way. And my students, when I tell people that I teach 7th grade, the response that I usually get is, really? That is such a difficult age. And my answer is, yes, really. Difficult age or not, my students are awesome. My students are awesome. They are eager and willing to learn. They are sweet, intelligent, and entertaining. The list could go on forever. In closing, to reflect on the words of Ray Bradbury, love what you do and do what you love. The students are the reason I love what I do, and I would like to thank you for honoring me for doing what I love. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we will honor our Westfield High School teachers. Mr. Renwick will come to the podium after all 3 resolutions are presented and after we hear from our teachers. First is Stephen Boyle. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Stephen Boyle, Distinguished Teacher of the Year, 2012-2013. Whereas the Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award has been established to annually recognize a teacher who, through both excellence in teaching and a demonstrated commitment to intellectual pursuits beyond the classroom, serves as a model and inspiration to the high school community to strive towards excellence. And whereas this award presented to Stephen Boyle, a dedicated biology teacher at Westfield High School since 2005, who is a skilled teacher who is committed to his science and to help each student succeed. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Stephen Boyle for receiving the 2013 Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment. And that this resolution be presented to Stephen Boyle on June 11, 2013, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes a part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education.
To be nominated for this award from the students that I teach really truly means a lot to me. They are the reasons why everything I do for them. And I always try to make sure I make the classroom enjoyable and make sure the learning is always fresh. There's many great teachers at Westfield High School, and to receive this honor is really, truly means a lot. So I just want to thank the Westfield Foundation, the Board of Education, Mr. Renwick, Dr. Dolan, the Westfield community, and most importantly, my students. So, thank you very much.
Sure, please. Thank you. Zarana Koljak is next. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Zorana Koljak, Westfield High School PTSO Teacher of the Year 2012-2013. Whereas the Westfield High School PTSO Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award has been established to annually recognize a teacher who is encouraging and motivating, is a good role model, and shows respect for coworkers, students, and parents. And whereas this award is presented to Zorana Koljak, a dedicated mathematics teacher at Westfield High School since 2001, who motivates and cares for her students. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Zorana Koljak for receiving the 2013 PTSO Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment. And that this resolution be presented to Zorana Koljak on June 11, 2013, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes a part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here and to be recognized by the parents of Westfield, as well as my students, my dearest students, the ones that I had in previous years and the ones that I have this year as well. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here, and I thank everybody for acknowledging and taking the time to come here and recognize our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrea Hill. Congratulations. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Andrea Hill. Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award winner, 2012-2013. Whereas the Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award has been established to annually recognize a member of the Westfield High School staff for excellence in education. And whereas this award, whose namesakes were a former principal of Westfield High School and a former teacher, has been conferred upon Andrea Hill. And whereas Andrea Hill, a dedicated mathematics teacher at Westfield High School since 2000, is commended for her care and commitment to the students of Westfield. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Andrea Hill for receiving the 2013 Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award for Excellence in Education, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment. And that this resolution be presented to Andrea Hill on June 11, 2013, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes a part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education.
Good evening. Thank you so much to the Board of Education, for the Westfield Foundation, and for Dr. Dolan for this honor me tonight. I'll keep this short and sweet. I had the honor of giving a longer speech at the awards night, so I promise I'll keep this short. This is truly one of the greatest moments in my life. I am so honored and blessed to be here today. For as long as I remembered, I loved math class. Math always made sense to me, and ever since middle school, I knew I wanted to be a math teacher. When I was growing up, I had many teachers that were such an inspiration to me, and parents that always supported me. Every one of my 17 years of teaching have been remarkable in different ways. Over the years, I've learned to teach the student and not the subject, with the hope that the students would develop a love for math and a better understanding of it. I'm so lucky to have a job that I love, and every day I try to give 100%. I'm fortunate to be working here at WHS with an outstanding staff. This school is such a special community. My fellow teachers, staff, and administration make me so proud to be a part of such an amazing school system. I'd like to thank my husband and my daughter, my parents, my family, and my friends for all their love and support. I would not be here today without them. Once again, I'd like to thank the Board of Education, the administrators of Westfield High School, Peter Renwick, and Gina Keychek for all their support and guidance. I'd like to thank the student who nominated me and the committee who elected me. I am so unbelievably honored to have won such an amazing award. I want to thank all my students for a tremendous school year. They are the main reason why I'm here today, and they are the reason I love to come to work every day. They challenge me and make me a better person and teacher. Thank you so much for making this one of the greatest moments of my life.
I'd just like to ask Principal Peter Renwick to say a few words.
I was coming. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to the board and Dr. Dolan for providing this opportunity. I am very proud and honored to be a representative of Westfield High School to honor these three outstanding teachers. We could spend a lot of time here tonight talking about all of their individual accomplishments. I could talk a lot about how special a place, as we've heard, Westfield High School is in the community of learners and teachers that we have there. These three teachers represent a very talented and dedicated staff, but I will just tell you two stories. One is what it was like to sit at the table, to listen to and read the nominations, and to hear the committee speak on behalf of each of these very talented teachers, their passion and dedication to the craft. And then, as many of you know, at this time of year, this exciting time of year, when we have many celebrations and awards, scholarships offered, we had a very special award tonight. And each of these, Mr. Boyle, Ms. Koljak, and Ms. Hill, spoke to the students and to parents about what it meant to be a teacher, what it means to be a teacher. And each of them showed their passion, their dedication, their talents, and why they are teaching, and it was really quite a special night. So again, I'm very proud and honored to represent all of the community at Westfield High School and the Westfield community, because we truly are blessed to have each of you influencing our children with your talents, your passion, and your dedication. We thank you. You represent all of us at Westfield High School so well. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. We'll take a short break at this point from our meeting so that everyone could have the opportunity to congratulate all of you, all of our teachers tonight, and enjoy refreshments provided by your generous PTO committees. Thank you again, everyone. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'll now recognize the public for agenda items only. I would note that the first superintendent's report is on the reinstatement of a school resource officer. To the extent you have comments on that topic, you may want to wait until after the presentation. Anybody like to comment on any topic on the agenda? Yes?
Yes, I would like to.
Wonderful. You step to the podium and state your name and address.
Reiterate what you said.
That was pretty clear.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Sullivan. I live in 820 Grant Avenue, Westfield Town. And before I start talking tonight, I wanted to say that it was a really great honor for me to be present for all the awards. I think it's interesting that I'm going to talk about campus security and school security, while the flip side is we're telling us teachers how great they are. And we have some challenges that we have to talk about. But I just wrote some notes here.
Charlie, can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
You want to comment before you hear the presentation or after?
Well, I
it's
think,
up to you, but I just make sure you understood.
I have an idea what you know the folks
That's fine. Go ahead.
They're going to say.
Yep.
But just to say, my name is Charles Sullivan. I'm a parent of a high school student in Westfield who was asked by several members of the Board of Education to meet with town officials to perform a risk assessment of the high school last January in light of the Sandy Hook shootings. I'm an expert in school security and public safety who has over 30 years of experience, 30 years of operational educational experience in the field, including a Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and I also have a postgraduate certification in security informatics. Currently, only 3% of security professionals worldwide are ASA certified. I'm 1% of 3%. I'm also a local town resident, so begs the difference why the town would want me to come do the risk assessment. I've mentioned my professional credentials and support for the Westfield school system for this article, so readers can realize that I'm here to help, not to hurt anyone. I developed my risk assessment for the school after my walkthrough with several members of public safety and school officials, in which I highlight the accepted method of crime prevention through environmental design. Basically, what that is physical shape of building, how it's designed for security, access control, visibility, that sort of thing. That's the accepted method. So, I learned this technique in graduate school after my police career, because I found that not all police officers make good security people. They just don't. When I retired from the NYPD, I thought I knew it all about security until I took my first class and I realized I didn't know anything. So, in a corporate world, that's the same. So, I learned my lessons in school. Okay? The reason I'm writing, that I wrote this article today, and I'm here today, and let me just say, I don't want to be here. I did not want to come here because in the past I've supported everything the Westfield Board of Education did, but I was really upset that the town would consider putting an armed police officer, armed police/resource officer in the school and paying $100,000 a year. To me, that's unacceptable, and I'll go on. Okay? The reason why I'm writing this article today is to question the effectiveness of an armed resource officer in the school district. I'm concerned that the Westfield Police Department is giving bad advice to the school board at a cost of $100,000 per year, in my professional opinion, as a seasoned police officer who has worked in some of the busiest precincts in the NYPD. When I was a police officer, I worked in Manhattan South, worked at 9th Precinct, East Village, worked in Chinatown, worked in anti-crime. I would go to a shooting once a week. I've been to mass casualties, people who were burnt, stabbed, any way to hurt somebody. I've been a part of that, and I'm not reliving that. But now I live in Westfield Town, and everything is great. But I've lived through these massive events where multiple people have been hurt or injured. I've experienced that, which I hope I didn't. I didn't want to, but that's my job. So, okay. I believe the town should, let's say what I think the town should do. I think the budget, $100,000, is not unacceptable to me. It's still a lot of money, but I think that if the town were to hire 2 people, one male, one female, resource officers, it makes a lot of sense to me because I've been living in this town for 15 years. And I've coached PAL football, I've coached Westfield soccer, I've coached softball, I've coached several other teams. I've coached girls' teams and boys' teams. And sometimes I would say that some female students may connect to a female officer versus a male officer, or vice versa. I'm just saying having that option is a good thing for the town because it's about open lines of communication, because security is a proactive activity. Law enforcement is reactive, just the way it is. Okay, hiring unarmed resource officers in my plan. This was, I wrote that I did the survey in January. I mean, was there at school for a couple hours, and then wrote the plan. My original plan had SRO in it because you need that. Miss Maz is in the audience, and Miss Maz, I have two girls. One graduated, one's in school now. Miss Maz is a rock star to my kids because she's like the best. She is the person that people go to when they have issues. And not that I wrote this with her in mind, but in my family, in my house, she's a rock star. My opinion is supported by the United States Secret Service report on preventing school violence. It's there's an article. It was written in 2002, United States Secret Service Safe School Initiative Report, in which the service identified several pre-shooting factors that could be addressed by training SROs, including bullying, target violence toward a student or administrator, open conversations between students about plans for attacks, not to mention identifying warning signs attackers being encouraged by the students. Again, a resource officer in the school is someone a student could go to and talk to. And you don't need a firearm for that. You just don't. Listen, I carry a gun and shield for my lifestyle. I have a security company now who does risk assessments called yourcollegeprofile.com. I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I understand about the need for a firearm and a police officer, security officer, and not. In my opinion, it's not needed. But we go further. Recent history has identified school staff members and fellow students as first responders, and according to the United States Secret Service, most shootings incidents were not resolved by law enforcement intervention. More than half of the school attacks ended before law enforcement responded to the scene. In these cases, faculty or fellow students stopped the attacker, or the attacker stopped shooting on his own or committed suicide. Between the first shot is fired to the last, between 16 and 20 minutes, documented by the United States Secret Service. Okay. Okay, this is a very important. This is a very important point because the average response time of a patrol unit is approximately 4 to 6 minutes. A SWAT team, approximately 20 minutes. SWAT team, tactical team, members specially trained. They're not normally on patrol. They could be administrative officers. They could be in different places. When they're notified, a tactical team is notified, they have to either respond to the scene with that equipment or report back to the station house to get equipment to come out. When they get on the scene, they have to find an incident commander. They need to be briefed on the area involved, weapons check. That takes more than 20 minutes, average. According to Secret Service, average 20 minutes. And it could be more. So I thought it was important. Okay. So, again, I live in town and I'm a supporter of the police because I am a police officer. I don't want to be here talking about police responses and issues because, you know, I took an oath. I carry a shield for my career. But I can't stand, my obligation, my oath, is the people of this town, the kids, and teachers. That's why I'm here. And it's kind of interesting that I'm here because the teachers are being recognized tonight. And please, if I see one more picture of the SWAT teams after an active shooter response team, those resources would be better served, in my opinion, training other departments to respond to our school. The Westfield Police Department, I don't know for a fact, but from my observations, they turn out 3 patrol cars on average and a supervisor, right? So we already know it's going to take 4 to 6 minutes to get to the first officer on the scene. Westfield High School has over 2,000 people in the building. They have 13 entranceways. They have 8 stairwells. Where do you want to go? You're a police officer, you respond to that scene. Where do you want to go? We know the tactical team's not going to be on scene for 20 minutes. Before Virginia Tech, police officers were told part of their training manual was to wait for a second or third responding officer to come in and go in as a team. But we found it wasn't good because people were getting shot every 15 seconds during school shooting. So now they go in. Now, when I was at the school, I mentioned to the chief that, you know, I understand that you have several officers on patrol at any one time, but if there's a mass shooting, you're going to have police officers responding from State Police in Parkway. You're going to have Clark Police. And several other police officers responding to this building that have never been in the building. They have no idea where anything is. Forget about being a supervisor, a temp teacher that you're in the building. No idea. So, again, you know, having a security resource officer to direct the response. Basically what their job is to try to make everybody safe, make notifications, get them into cover, safety. And then as police officers arrive, to direct the traffic. Unfortunately for me, I have seen in the real world what bad things can happen. And I don't have to tell it to you. You can just go back and click and look at different shootings you've seen over the last weeks and months and years, where you'll have 50 radio cars on the front lawn of some school. Where is everybody? I don't know where everybody is. Where's the temporary headquarters? I don't know where it is. Where's the triage area? I don't know where it is. What hospital are we using for triage or for shooting victims? I found out later on. I didn't know that. I had to ask the Westfield Rescue that they go to Newark. They don't go to Overlook. I didn't know that. See, we'll all learn together. Now, I hope I'm not boring you guys with this, but it's to me it's emotional, it's personal because I did this survey. I identified what doors had to be fixed for access control. Students should have new ID cards. What kind of lighting the building should have. What kind of alarm system they have. What kind of cameras they should have. I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get a call from the public safety people. I didn't get a call from the Westfield Board of Education. I didn't get a phone call from the mayor's office. Now, I'm not a paid consultant. I'm doing this on my time. I'm here to help you. And I was really, kind of shocked that I wasn't able to help the town. But then after reading about this, hiring this low, SRO and firearm, I thought, well, maybe I should speak. And some of my family members agreed, and that's why I'm here. But there's one last thing I want to say to you, okay? Westfield High School has always prided itself on technology, right? Technology, it's all great. If anybody in this room now has a laptop or a handheld device, I would wish for them to go to www.defendcall.com. A company it's located in Connecticut. After the shootings in Sandy Hook, they developed a handheld app device for phones where teachers, students in college, teachers, administrators could press a button and send an immediate alarm signal to send a signal to help. Now, the cool thing about it, and I don't work for them, it's new technology. I don't work for them. But the technology allows you to send 4 separate messages. It allows you to send a message to the state police. It allows you to send a message to the Westfield police. It gives you an opportunity to send a message to the principal of the school. It happens, you get a message to the superintendent of schools instantly. And the person who pushed the button, satellite, within 2 feet of where they are. 2 feet. So not only are you transmitting an immediate alarm, they know, the police department will know within 2 feet of where you are. What? I would rather have this technology in schools with trained security resource officer would have some type of other background than having somebody carry a firearm. It doesn't make sense. Princeton University is like Westfield Town. Their public safety officers do not have firearms. I'm surprised by that, but the culture of this school, this community, it's a hometown community. Nobody wants kids. Seeing a police officer in a school with a firearm, it's more reactive than proactive. During an emergency, even if we're at the school, you tell me 2,000 people to 1, what that person's going to do for you. Think about it. 2,000 to 1. That's how many people in that school? 1 officer with a firearm. Where's your money going? Where's it going? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I said that I would be able to answer any questions anybody had about security. I'll answer them because I really am an expert in this field. So if anybody in the room would have questions about security, public safety, please ask. Please ask. Got any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Wait. No, that's not how it works.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your comments. And anyone in the audience is absolutely welcome to comment on this topic. I don't want to have back and forth between the speaker and the audience. That's all.
I'm sorry.
That's no problem, Charlie.
Thank you.
I think so, yeah. So, if I might, it might be helpful if I do give the presentation because honestly, I appreciate Mr. Sullivan's expertise and he has been very gracious with sharing his knowledge. However, that truly isn't the topic this evening. Maybe what people think the topic is, but it's not. And certainly long before the recent tragedy in Newtown, schools were trying to prepare in different ways and trying to learn from tragedies that have happened. But certainly what happened in December made that all the more important. And I will tell you that not only myself, but administrators throughout this district have spent a great deal of time trying to learn from those where this is their area of expertise. I'll tell you that one of the things I've learned is that when you are making changes to security, which we have quite a bit in this district, you don't announce them, you don't put them on your website, you don't do a commercial about them, you don't advertise them. And we are not talking about steps taken for security in public because that is not going to help our schools. And that is a lesson I have heard from not only local law enforcement, but from FBI and from state-level people as well. While security is really important, and while that is not my initial training, I have learned quite a deal about it, and we are not going to discuss details like that because it sort of takes away the importance and the effectiveness of that security. Here's what I would like to talk about tonight. It's a very focused topic. I think some people have a different point of view as to what the topic is, but this is what it is. So let me see if I can present that, and then certainly there'll be time for any comments people may have. So on the board agenda tonight is a resolution for the Board of Education to join with the town of Westfield to reinstate the position of School Resource Officer at Westfield High School. We were very fortunate for over a decade to have a committed and knowledgeable Westfield police officer who served as a school resource officer in Westfield High School. It was part of the fabric of Westfield High School for over a decade. When that gentleman retired, when that officer retired, the position was cut due to budget concerns. I will tell you personally that since that time, at least every year, and certainly a few times most years, I personally and the high school principal requested that that position be reinstated. This is not something new. This is not a reaction to anything. It was a successful position in the high school that was part of the fabric of Westfield High School. So this is not a recommendation that is being made lightly or in reaction to anything. Tonight you will hear a bit from me, from the Chief of Police of Westfield, Chief Wayman, from Principal Peter Renwick, Principal of Westfield High School, and from the Director of Guidance, Maureen Mazaris. So this year, the topic of reinstating the position of School Resource Officer at Westfield High School was brought up again as part of the development of the budget for 2013-14. And if I may, I'd like to replay the segment of the March 5th, 2013 Board of Education public meeting in which Business Administrator Dana Sullivan outlines additions to the budget, including that of the School Resource Officer.
We are adding $50,000 to the budget for a School Resource Officer. We anticipate that this will cover about half of the cost of salary and benefit for a police officer. who will mostly be stationed at the high school but will work district-wide with kids. We are continuing conversations with the town. In fact, we have a meeting at the end of this week. So we're hoping that they will share the cost with us and that it'll be a benefit to both the town and the school district.
So following that March 5th meeting, the district posted Ms. Sullivan's complete budget PowerPoint presentation on the website, and it was summarized in the synopsis, which was also posted on the district website and emailed to subscribers. On March 21st, at the public hearing of the budget, the board unanimously approved the 2013-14 budget. Now, Principal Renwick and I had recommended the reinstatement of this position because of our positive experiences with school resource officers, both in other districts, and my experience with Ron Allen, the resource officer who had been in Westfield. But the month after the budget adoption, in April of this year, our recommendation received support from New Jersey's Task Force on Safety. The NJ SAFE Task Force recommended that schools be encouraged to consider using school resource officers. The report was very clear that it was not recommending armed security guards. And let me be clear, no one in this district is recommending an armed security guard for Westfield High School. The recommendation is for a school resource officer or an SRO. So what is an SRO? An SRO is a sworn law enforcement officer assigned to a school on a long-term basis. The SRO is specifically trained in and performs three main functions: law enforcement officer, law-related counselor, and law-related educator. In addition, the SRO works in collaboration with the school and the community as a resource. The SRO program is essentially a type of community policing, where the officer's beat is the school. These officers become an integral part of the school community, and the emphasis on positive interactions with students and staff. These last few sentences came directly from the report of the New Jersey SAFE Task Force, but those of us who have worked with SROs would use the same words based on our experience. Also quoting from the New Jersey SAFE Task Force report, furthermore, experience shows that SROs earn trust among the student population so that students who would otherwise be reluctant to call police feel comfortable sharing information that might help nip a problem before it escalates into senseless violence. The point is simply that far from disrupting a school environment, these officers contribute to that environment as full-fledged and well-respected members of the school community. So as a result of the success of the Westfield School Resource Officer that we've had in the past, and the current anti-bullying law's emphasis on safe, respectful, and secure school climates, and the growing population at the high school, the position was included in the 2013-14 budget, which was approved this past spring. The SRO is another example of shared services in the community. The school district would reimburse the town of Westfield in the amount of $50,000 for the officer's assignment during the 13-14 school year. The resolution approving this is on tonight's agenda. The SRO would be subject to all rules, regulations, and policies of the police department and will be an officer who has undergone training as an SRO. I've asked our Chief of Police, David Wayman, to join us this evening, and he will now provide us with further details. You'd like to take the podium, Chief?
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd just like to start off with saying, during my tenure as police chief, I just want to tell the school board and the Westfield community, first off, how fortunate they are. I've really gotten over through the course of my tenure, I've really gotten to know the school administration, Dr. Dolan, Dana Sullivan. I met every principal, every vice principal at every school in Westfield, walked every school in Westfield, and I really think that the town and the school board is really fortunate to have dedicated professionals that are committed and self-driven for the best of every student in town. And during the course of this tenure also, I have had the opportunity to work with the school board administration, and I think the relationship we have between the school board and the town is second to none. I've gone to, every year there's a memorandum of agreement that must be met with all educators and law enforcement professionals. And attending these meetings, there is not any other town in Union County that has the relationship that Westfield Police has with the Board of Education, and I think everyone benefits from that relationship. But I just wanted to start off by saying that I think Dr. Dolan really touched upon a lot of key points regarding a school resource officer. As I have my notes, some of it is rehashing what Dr. Dolan has said, but going back onto what is school, defining and what is a school resource officer. Once again, it is a sworn law enforcement officer who's highly trained and experienced and qualified, who possesses the qualities and traits necessary to enhance the educational experience of all the students. This officer, if allowed, will have the ability to build upon a role which has already been defined within our school system, as Dr. Dolan spoke about with Detective Allen in the past. This role has been defined within our school system for a number of years, but once again has just unfortunately been unable to be fulfilled in the past few years. Once again, what Dr. Dolan says, this is the furthest thing from an armed guard. There is no armed guards. Okay, this is a sworn law enforcement officer that has received the necessary training to take part in this program. And going forth, as Dr. Dolan said, his roles, not only as a law enforcement officer, but as an educator and as a mentor to the students. This officer will be in daily contact with the students and on a positive and constructive environment to develop a relationship to mentor these children, to teach the students regard and promote respect for people and property. Going into the qualifications of what the school resource officer, I know I touched upon it. I may bounce around a little bit, but going back to what a school resource officer, the qualities that he possesses, you're getting, once again, an experienced, trained law enforcement officer who's trained as being a first responder, that providing medical aid, that providing, if needed, CPR, that if needed, the administration of a defibrillator. You're getting an officer who is trained in methods of instruction, certified in methods of instruction, that can take part in classroom activities as an educator and enhance the educational experience by bringing law enforcement experience and questions to a classroom setting. The officer, he's trained in our department. In our department, we do train. We'd be neglected if we didn't. We do train for active shooter situations. We do this in-house. We do this inside our department. We train our own. This officer is trained by the National Tactical Officers Association as a trainer in response to an active shooter situation. This officer, what other qualifications? There's a number of them. Oh, and I know, once again, you get away from the armed guard situation, but well, once again, the officer is also not only certified to carry a firearm, but he is a certified instructor in firearms. He instructs our police officers in the proper way to administer firearms if necessary. But this officer is also knowledgeable in juvenile law, but most importantly, a highlight must be that he must possess the communication that will allow the officer to function effectively within the school environment, so the officer would be part of the school environment and the school community. I can go upon a whole list of what the responsibilities of this officer would do during his daily duties. Just touch upon taking part in the required security drills at the schools. As you know, I believe it's since 2010, all schools are required to perform a minimum of 2 security drills annually. So therefore, that's 20 drills, security drills that would be guaranteed that an officer would be present to take part in and ensure that the proper operation, ensure that it is being, and make any recommendations of improvement. The officer would also be a liaison between the police department and the schools on all subjects, once again, discussing this memorandum of agreement between law enforcement and education officials, which includes the latest anti-bullying Bill of Rights. The officer will be a liaison to the schools regarding all Megan's Law issues. The officer will be a liaison to the schools regarding all domestic violence issues concerning restraining orders or child custody laws. The officer, once again, when called upon by the faculty, will assist in fostering the educational programs and activities by classroom instruction. They'll develop a working relationship with the faculty and administration, and upon request can also provide them with in-service instruction on a variety of relevant topics within the school board. And one of the other things that I touched upon was a mentor. Allows the officer, and this is one of the most important, allows the officer to establish a relationship with the students in a positive, non-confrontational setting. This setting provides the opportunity to interact with students in positive and constructive ways to gain the students' trust. So I guess the question would be, what will our school resource officer provide to the Westfield school system? And I just made a brief synopsis of what I envision, what I believe, and in talking to the school administration is what they believe. The officer will provide a safe and secure school environment for the students and faculty, which will enhance the educational experience of all the students by providing a safe environment. They'll become part of the school community in a way that supports the nurturing environment that is conducive to education while enhancing safety. They will promote the academic mission of the Westfield public school system by avoiding students being distracted from academic achievement. And being here tonight, and it was an honor being here and seeing the teachers being represented. And all this officer is going to do is enhance what these great teachers that you do have can provide. That's what the school resource officer is to do. I touched upon it being a direct liaison for the Westfield Police Department to the Westfield Public Schools that will enhance an already excellent relationship that I touched upon that we have today into a partnership or a team striving towards the common goal of what is best for students. Finally, the officer will be a positive addition to the school community who, I'm sure and I know, will be accepted and embraced by the students and faculty, administration, and the parents.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Chief.
And if I could ask, sorry. And if I could ask Principal Renwick to speak?
If we have questions, we wait till.
Yeah, I think so,
We'll get
yeah.
them all.
Ju-
We'll get
just
them.
have two more.
Okay, that's fine.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you about the school resource officer. I agree with the points that have been made clear tonight by both Dr. Dolan and Chief Wayman, but I'd like to be clear as to why I support this position for Westfield High School and as a resource also for the other schools in the district. Mainly from my own experience. I worked for 15 years alongside a school resource officer, 10 years as a teacher, and 5 years as an administrator. As Dr. Dolan mentioned, I have been speaking with her since coming to Westfield about the benefits of having a school resource officer, and we have talked about what it would take to get a school resource officer. We've looked at different opportunities and grant opportunities, and I was very pleased to hear that we would finally be getting the school resource officer back to Westfield High School. Beyond helping to provide a safe and secure learning environment, responding to emergencies, as has been mentioned, and addressing an immediate threat, there are many benefits to having this resource, and that is exactly what I see in this position. The SRO is a resource for our school and would be a resource for our school community. I like how it's been described as a liaison between the faculty, administration, staff, and students with the police. My experience has been, and it is my belief that it will be with this officer, that they are a role model to our students. They can offer advice, mediation when dealing with conflicts, can provide education on a variety of law-related topics to different classes, can promote respect and a sense of citizenship through their example. They are also knowledgeable about the law and can provide a different perspective when evaluating our building safety plan. Being in the building and comfortable with the building and knowing the building, they will certainly have the best sense of the outline, the building layout if there is an emergency, and would be able to assist others should there be a situation that required others to come into the building. I strongly believe that one of the greatest benefits of this position is the relationships that they will develop with our students, our staff, faculty, and the administration. And again, I speak from experience with this. They can also address a variety of potential problems so as to prevent or address potential issues that might occur within our school. I strongly believe that our school community would benefit from the partnership created with the police, a very strong one, as Chief Wayman has already mentioned, through the liaison position of an SRO. I would like to quote again, because I think that it does state in general the position that we stand here, that we have tonight as an administration and a police department, that this would enhance the education experience for not only our students, but all community members. Just a few other points that I thought were relevant, that again, just to echo that these are trained officers. They will be able to address a serious threat much faster and more effectively being in the building. They can also facilitate immediate communication with other resources and police officers, and as I've mentioned, they will know the building very well. I would like you to know that I've spoken with a number of my colleagues who support the SRO, who have an SRO, who question why, who really support the SRO. I'll just leave it at that. they report, and I have witnessed students building those relationships, that students report feeling safer, and I have seen the trust that can be instilled between young adults in our community and with the police. And finally, I am aware of the very positive experience that Westfield High School has had with the former SRO until we had the budget cut. And I would like now to introduce Ms. Mazaris, who can talk more about that.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been at a Board of Education meeting with this many people there. The last time it was, I can tell you, it was back in 1993, and the heated debate was over the family living curriculum and what dangers we were presenting to our children when we talked about forbidden topics. We've come a long way in the family living curriculum since then and have learned that, in fact, knowledge is never dangerous. It is empowering, and that sometimes change is okay. I was asked to come here tonight particularly to speak about my personal experience with a school resource officer at Westfield High School. It is the only experience I have with a school resource officer. But it was a long one, and it really was my experience throughout most of my years as a student assistance counselor at the high school, where a lot of my time and a lot of my work was spent at risk management, a different kind of risk, but definitely risk management, and on making sure that kids that needed us the most were being noticed and cared for and attended to. I valued, as part of my student assistance team, our school resource officer. He was part of our team. Our paths crossed daily, often, and almost always with best possible outcomes. He was respected and sought after by administrators, nurses, club advisors, coaches, teachers, parents, and most impressively, by students. He was a familiar face in the halls, at games, and at events. I would watch kids seek him out to talk about the law, how to get out of their traffic tickets, little things like that, about what a career in law enforcement might be like. They talked about their concerns about themselves, their worries for their friends. Sometimes they just stopped by to tell them a joke or to share some good news. Not a different relationship than the one that they would have, we hope that they would have with us as counselors, teachers, paraprofessionals, all of those people in buildings who work to be part of a student's life. He rallied seniors to the bash. I say that because rallying seniors to a drug and alcohol-free event was something that was daunting for us as staff, but not so daunting for him. As he got them on the bus, as he got them off the bus, and he made them realize that being safe and substance-free was okay. As we began to grapple with emerging technology and cyberbullying, we depended on him to help us understand the law, to help us translate a cyber technology that was new to us. Nobody knows better than those of us in the room that technology and the ways that it helps us, but the challenges that it presents grow daily. And our students' ability to understand the implications of everything they do in cyberspace, particularly around issues that can come to mean bullying or harassment or making anybody feel uncomfortable, requires consistent, ongoing, and up-to-date knowledge, which sometimes happens faster than I can keep up with. Ron, our school resource officer, was a valued member of our crisis management team. We have one now. We will always need one. I will tell you a story that remains vivid in my mind. I recall a time when Westfield High School had a bomb scare. It was shortly after Columbine. We were a nervous, anxious, frightened community. Students needed to enter the building one at a time, have their backpacks checked, so that we could be safe. Ron manned that door as every student entered. He knew most of them by name, and they all knew him. He greeted them. He helped us all ease into a sense of normalcy at a very, very difficult time. He was a strong link to the community and a strong link to parents. I remember many times when Ron Allen Bob Ayer and I would go to the home of a student who was missing too much school. Really, not getting the education we owed to them and that they needed to be successful. It was the trio of our differing perspectives that was oftentimes all it took to get that kid back to school. A little bit of the police, a little bit of the counselor, a little bit of the administrator. Our school resource officer was our connection to the neighborhood council, to the Westfield Community Center, to the recreation department, to family crisis intervention, to Trinitas Hospital, to the Westfield Rescue Squad. He made it happen faster than any of us could. In some cases, he was trusted more by parents than anyone else in the building. In the safety of the school building, rather than at the police station, worried parents could get some facts and be open to suggestions and interventions. On many, many occasions, parents suspecting that their children may be experimenting with drugs or alcohol and headed down a risky road would come to school to meet with Detective Allen, who would then walk them down to my office where I could begin to provide the support and the interventions that they needed. It was a collaboration that resulted in an intervention, and that's what we want. It preceded a suspension or an arrest or a student whose life was going to be thrown away. Westfield High School is a bigger place now than when we last had a resource officer. More kids require more and differing resources. All kids need that adult who they connect to, and it is different for different students. I believe that the right, carefully selected, highly trained, eager to work with students, student resource officer can be an invaluable asset at Westfield High School. I had this conversation with, my children are graduates of Westfield High School, of the entire Westfield public school system. I say that proudly, and so do they. I had the opportunity to be at a gathering this past weekend of about 25 of them, friends of my children, celebrating birthdays of their children, which is amazing to me. And I broached the topic. I said, how many of you remember the school resource officer? And they said, the who? The what? And I said, no, how many of you remember Detective Allen? And they said, oh, is that what he was? He was just cool. They liked him, they respected him. I asked them this very important question, and I say this just as a point of thought for you. I said, did he carry a gun? Not one of them remembered. Not one of them remembered. I had this identical conversation with my husband, who taught at Westfield High School for 37 years. We argued about the point. We differed. I won't tell you who was right. But we, together, as teachers in the building, had differing remembrances of that, but not differing remembrances of the value of having Ron Allen in the building. I believe that not everyone who loves math should be a math teacher. I believe that not everyone who likes to help people should be a counselor. I believe that not everybody who likes money should be a financial advisor. I don't believe that every police officer has what it takes to be a school resource officer. But I think every school could benefit from one. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other presenters?
No, and I think Mrs. Massery summed it up very well.
Okay, then I'd like to go to board comments and questions and then open it up to the public. And we will keep the microphones open as needed, so don't be anxious about having time to speak. Lucy.
Good evening. Excuse me for rehashing a lot of the things that have been mentioned, and I just want to let you know that I'm coming from the viewpoint of an educator for 20 years and working in a school district every day. School resource officers have been around for decades. They are not security guards or hired police officers that stand guard at a front door. SROs are fully sworn law enforcement officers, armed and uniformed, and assigned to a school full-time, just like an officer must be assigned to a particular neighborhood. The National Association of School Resource Officers state that there are approximately 15,000 SROs around the country. An SRO works collaboratively with educators, students, parents, and the community to offer educational programs in the schools. They strengthen the efforts of protecting the student body, school, staff, school grounds, and school property. They reduce drug abuse, crime, dating violence, violence in general, bullying, and social networking conflicts. Yes, in Westfield, that occurs at times too. They are first responders for any and all critical incidences, whether it's an intruder, a student fight, or a health emergency. Having a police officer in our high school can limit the 4 to 6 minutes of response time when seconds count. Response time is immediate when there is a hired SRO in the building. All this is what contributes to a safer school environment. SROs are part of the kids' education. They become a part of the staff. They can be guest speakers in classrooms where they can provide law-related education, not only to students, but to parents and staff members. They teach students about the importance of the justice system, respecting others and their property. SROs help bridge the gap between adults and students by developing rapport. They build trust with kids, and in turn, kids are willing to come forward and report things. Our children see what's in the news daily, and they want a safe school too. And in turn, an SRO officer give our students a sense of security and safety. I also want to mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, Officer Wakeman, I also want to mention that SRO officers have to be an acting police officer? Okay. Retired police officers cannot be a school resource officer. That is what we are focusing on. SROs must be trained in different classes, DARE programs, drug and alcohol programs, and specific training for being in a school system. It takes a specific police officer to be an SRO. As Maureen Mazzarese mentioned, not every police officer meets those special qualifications. I would like to also point out that as an educator working in a school on a daily basis, no one can tell me that the security I feel when a police officer is present doesn't exist. In my district, we have, at the elementary level, unarmed security guards. However, we also have police officers making their rounds throughout the day to the schools as well. Every morning, there's a police officer there, along with the principal, to greet all the children and the parents. The presence of a police officer is not only comforting to me and my staff, but to the students as well. Although at the elementary level, the police officers are not SROs, yet their daily presence gives the students a feeling of comfort, not fear, as some have stated. They are part of the building and the daily routine. When just our unarmed security guard is there, that comfort goes right out the window. Our unarmed security guard will be the first one to tell you that his job is a waste of money without being armed. I almost fell off my chair when he told me that last week. About a few months ago, I was involved in a real lockdown at school. We do have an SRO in our high school. Being that he is an active police officer, he received word from his radio that we had an active shooter on our grounds before our own school did. He contacted my principal on our walkie-talkie, and I was with my principal at the time. And we were in a lockdown immediately. If it wasn't for the SRO, who knows what would have happened? The response time was immediate. In closing, retired police officers and security guards cannot be SROs, which is what we are discussing. Lastly, if we were talking about just security, an unarmed security guard is not going to have the capacity to protect our children, teachers, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Anyone else? Rich?
Yeah. I have a few questions for each, well, not almost all of you that spoke. Maureen, I'll start with you. Prior to the position that you're in, Maureen, you were as you said, the student assistant counselor. If I'm correct, we haven't filled that position in the last few years since you've taken on your new role. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
I've continued to do good portions of it, but absolutely
Right.
not the full-time.
Right.
Absolutely not.
I guess to me, it seems like that might be a logical first step to fill that position. From what I've heard, that position has been, as you said, was very beneficial to troubled kids in the school. And they were able to work in the past with DARE counselors and things like that. So I'm just wondering why we're not approaching that first before we're looking at this position.
Well, that's a conversation I would welcome, and certainly one that I think it would be important to have. I don't know that they're mutually, I don't see them as exclusive. I actually see them as working together. I don't think that that one necessarily replaces the other. There's nobody that will speak more strongly and passionately about what a student assistance counselor can do for a school, and I believe that is an important conversation. But I do also believe that the school resource officer is unique in what they bring to the position as well. And there is an expertise there that is unique to that position, and the connection to the community that I think that you spoke about so well, Chief, is also an essential ingredient of that. It was a wonderful partnership. The partnership, actually it wasn't just a partnership, it just wasn't the school resource and the student assistance counselor. It was different. And I believe that the counseling piece of that demands a different kind of approach, a different kind of confidentiality, a different kind of intervention. When they work together, they work beautifully, but they don't replace each other at all.
Thanks. Not really sure who to answer this question, but have we done a survey of other communities, first of all, and have any sense of what the surveys have shown? And I guess the general question is, what percentage of schools in New Jersey currently have school resource officers?
So it's quite the mix, actually, because you have, and it's, there's not one place that seems to have all the data for it. You have some schools that have armed security guards who stand at the front door or whatever the entrances are that are labeled, and students come through in their metal detectors. You have schools that have that. You have schools that have security officers. You have schools who have retired police officers. You have schools that have unarmed security officers, and you have schools that have SROs. And there's quite a mixture, to tell you the truth. We did ask a number of districts, but honestly, there's quite a pattern that goes on, and we didn't find a pattern. There's no one place that seems to list all of those.
Okay, Chief Wayman, sorry, there. So, can you tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, how this person would be chosen, job requirements, things like that? Because you talked about the critical importance of this person being a good communicator and working with our kids, which is kind of what our counselors do. And I'm wondering what background the person on the force that you would look at has that kind of similar background, or just how you find that person, really.
Actually, the qualifications that I mentioned for SRO, the person that I do have in mind to be assigned possesses every single one of those qualifications. I'll enhance it even more. The officer that I do have in mind and that I spoke to Dr. Dolan about is a Westfield High School graduate. He has been on a job for approximately 8 years. So he is seasoned, he is experienced, he is very familiar with what is needed within the Westfield High School, not only the high school, but the intermediate and elementary schools. So he has intimate knowledge of the student body and what is needed to further enhance this position within the school system.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, I guess, where's Peter? There. Let's start with Peter, and then if anyone else can jump in on this. I guess this is sort of a general question, but since I've been the Board of Ed rep for the high school, it kind of jumps out at me. So I've been the Board of Ed rep for the last couple of years. I've been on the board for over almost 3 years now, and quite frankly, prior to the budget discussions, I have not heard anyone, whether it's yourself, Mrs. Mazaris, Dr. Dolan, parents, students, teachers, other board members, bring this up. And I find that it's just sort of, I'm learning a lot tonight, which I really appreciate, because a lot of this is very, very new to me, understanding the role of an SRO. But I'm just confused why there was this critical need today. And for the last 3 years, and maybe I don't know, maybe I missed the meeting, but I have not heard anything. And I'm just really confused where it's all coming from.
Well, I think what I addressed earlier, and we've talked about a little bit just recently, is that this is a position that I've expressed the desire to have. Dr. Dolan and I have talked about it. We've looked at other opportunities to bring it to the high school and looked at the budget. There's been some talk of budget, issues over the last couple of years and budget cuts, and this was, a desire that I had expressed, and I was thrilled to see that it was on the agenda. So I'm not sure what else you would want to know from that. We've talked about it. I've expressed my desire to have the position, and I'm thrilled that it's in the budget right now.
And I would just add, it did come up. I can't tell you every year. I can't give you the date. But for example, Jane Clancy was one who would bring up the topic, a former board member. She would bring it up as part of a budget discussion because when her older children were in the high school, there was an SRO, and she saw the value in it. So she was one who would bring it up. And I would agree with Peter, there were competing issues. And so it wasn't, although Peter every year asked for it, it was not something we were able to provide.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you to all the speakers tonight. This has been interesting because this is the first time that we've really got a lot of information about exactly what an SRO would do in the schools. I have a number of questions. My first question is regarding training, and that's something that both Dr. Dolan and Chief Wayman brought up. And I'd like to know what kind of training the SRO will receive, how long is the training, who does the training, and what exactly are they trained in? So probably Chief.
If you could just use the microphone, that would help. Thank you, sir.
Stay there.
Don't hold me to dates, but I want to say in 2006, a bill was enacted requiring standardized school resource officer training to take place for officers within the school district. This training is provided by the New Jersey School Resource Officers Association, which is recognized and accredited by the state. The school is, I would say, 7 to 10 days long. And the training breaks down everything that I've mentioned, that their position as a law enforcement officer, their position as an educator, and their position as a mentor. And it will subdivide and go into each topic in detail.
So they learn all of that in 7 to 10 days?
That is the training.
And do they learn specifically how to deal with children with special needs?
That is actually a separate training that we do within the police department. Thank you. It's called Crisis Intervention Team. The majority of all of my officers will be trained in it. The majority of them have been trained in it. It was actually promoted by the county approximately about 3 years ago, and we're continuing with that training. But yes, actually, that officer did attend the crisis is part of what's called CIT, Crisis Intervention Team.
I'm not sure that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking more like how to counsel and mentor a student with special needs, not if they're in a crisis situation at the moment, but how do you counsel and work with children like that?
I think you're defining crisis in a different meaning,
okay.
Different context, and what that training incorporates.
Okay. So regarding the anti-bullying law, I guess this would be for Dr. Dolan, what role will the SRO play in investigating allegations of bullying?
No, I don't believe they're going to be involved in the investigations because the law for that is very specific as to who conducts that. Mm-hmm. It is more in the anti-bullying law. Part of that law talks about the importance of establishing climate. So the law does not does not focus only on the investigations. It focuses on establishing a climate that discourages students not interacting with each other appropriately. So that's the way it supports that. And that's actually written into the law. So it mentions that in the law.
In the agreement that we looked at, it talks about how the SRO will help in the investigation of criminal offenses that occur off campus. And I was curious how that plays out. What does that mean exactly? Maybe that's a question for the chief.
The SRO will fall under the realm of our detective bureau in a chain of command status. So if an incident should have occurred outside of school, where the person is possibly known, the SRO would be able to, in accordance with the law, direct the investigation to and have a relationship with that student to resolve the problem, to resolve the crime.
I just have to say, as a board member, I feel that this is a major decision for us. And I've sat here for 9 years, actually longer than everyone at this table except for Ginny. And with every major decision that we've made, and I think bringing an armed police officer into the school is a major decision. We have vetted these decisions in a committee, and we have not done that. This is the first time the board has really discussed this issue at length, been able to ask a lot of questions about it, have understood what an SRO does, and I just feel like we're, no pun intended, but we're jumping the gun. I think that we should send this decision back to committee, or a committee of the whole, and I think that we really need to understand exactly what we're doing here. It's been 5 years since we've had an SRO. Everything's been going great. I was talking to Mr. Renwick 2 weeks ago about security, and I complimented him. I said, Peter, you know, every time I'm in the school, and I'm actually in the school a lot because I'm a volunteer in the drama department, I am always amazed at how well run the school is. And Peter actually told me, he said, that's what I want you to say tonight. But that's not why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because it's true. I'm always amazed when I'm standing in the hall and the bell rings and the kids come out and, you know, they're just so well behaved. You know, I'm sure there are a few kids somewhere in the back bathroom doing something they shouldn't be doing. But for the most part, our schools are so well run. And I'm just wondering, what is the urgency of making this decision tonight? I would just rather learn a lot more about why we need it, what the goals are we going to achieve our goals by hiring an SRO? And I don't think we should make a hasty decision. How I feel.
Thank you. Just to clarify one point for the public, though, we did have the topic of an SRO come up more than once in public. In fact, the board unanimously approved the budget. So if we didn't ask questions and went ahead and approved it, then maybe we fell down a little, I don't know. But I don't want anyone to think that we've moved this forward without the board knowing about it and without having the opportunity to ask questions in public and to have the topic raised. I think Dr. Dolan, at the beginning of her presentation, played a portion of a public meeting where the position was specifically called out. So I just don't want that misconception to be out there. Any other board comments or questions?
Well,
Brendan? Yeah, go ahead, hang on, Brendan.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate that, and I do remember it being mentioned, but we did not have a full discussion.
Okay, but you are a board member at the table. You could have. My only point is you were welcome to, right?
Okay.
You chose not to. It's important because I don't want the public to think we somehow didn't have the opportunity. Brendan.
I just want to make a couple comments as a recent graduate of Westfield High School. Ron Allen was there for my entire time as a student. I never saw him as a cop, but as somebody who was always around. He's in the hallway during lunchtime, maybe playing police officer, maybe just talking with a football player about something he saw he did in the game. I know he spent 3 days, I think it was sophomore year, coming into my social studies class, talking about application of law. At one point, I was actually the victim of a crime, minor, no charges were filed from it, but he was there. He was able to figure out pretty quickly who did it, because he's there. But he also checked up on me a week later, make sure everything was okay. When we just started talking about the SRO, or rehiring, I was surprised that it had disappeared. I knew he had retired. His son was a grade younger than me. He was just always there. He was on the football field when I was playing for PAL. And he was a real asset to the school community. Not just him, but the DARE officers who ran into one from 2001. He recognized me. This was over the summer. The officers really get involved with the school community. They know everybody. And I never needed him as in that capacity, but I knew if I did, he would be there. And I fully support bringing it back.
I just wanted to make another couple comments. I know there were a couple laughs over that there was only 7 to 10 days to train an SRO officer. However, he is a fully trained police officer. We get many certificates in life that require 30 to 40 hours of training. I'm honestly an Orrin Gillingham trained multi-sensory certified teacher. It took me 40 hours to receive that certificate in 5 days. So I just wanted to clarify that point. It's not that this is his entire career. It took him 7 to 10 days. And I don't know how else to say this point except that as a Westfield graduate as well, and my entire, my husband and my kids, and I know you mentioned, they all come out well behaved, and maybe there's except, for a few. We are in Westfield, and I understand we're in a great community, and this is why I moved back here with my kids. But I will not be naive to say that there is not drugs and alcohol going on in our high school, just like there is in every other high school. There is issues. There are issues. My son, who is going to be a junior, comes home and tells me. Should he be? No, but he does. There is stuff going on. If there's an SRO in our school, these children are there to reach out to them where they might not feel comfortable telling their guidance counselor. They might not feel comfortable telling their parents. They can reach out to an SRO officer who can have the capacity to build a relationship with each and every student. They look up to them. And I just wanted to make that clear that there are things that go on in our high school just like in every other high school. It doesn't matter what socioeconomic class we live in.
Rich, may I?
Please.
So this is a little bit of a tactical question for Dr. Dolan. So I understand, and maybe this would be good for the public. So there's an agreement that would be signed between the Board of Ed and the town, correct?
Yes.
About the roles and the responsibilities of the SRO. So can you just explain to everybody who controls the position, so at whose behest the particular individual serves, who gets to choose that person, what role do we have in selecting or saying, hey, that person no longer is a fit for us? Who ultimately contractually gets to decide that?
Sure. The agreement is for a year, first of all. Second of all, the person is an employee of the Westfield Police Department. However, I believe there is a phrase in there that says that the chief does consult with me as to who was being selected. I would also say, as a few people have said, and I couldn't agree any more, not every police officer would probably do well in this position. I couldn't agree more with that. And if we ever had someone who wasn't working, I would be the absolute first person to tell the board that. actually, Mr. Renwick would probably be the first person to tell me. And then we wouldn't want the wrong person in the high school. So we would have a say in that.
And does that agreement get into details about, because sometimes you negotiate contracts for the divorce, although you hope that it doesn't happen. So let's assume that it's a one-year deal, and after a few months, we feel, and there's an honest disagreement with the chief about the person's role and the job that they're doing. How would you foresee that would work?
I believe the way it's written, it really is, it's the district telling the town, agreeing to pay the $50,000 to the town for a year. I don't think it specifies whether the person could be changed, honestly. That's my memory of it. Someone can correct me.
If I may, just so you don't know, I don't know you, but the type of person that I am, I'll be honest with you, I've never recommended anybody for any position, any job that I ever. This is the first person that I am sure that would be able to fulfill the shoes of Ron Allen. If by chance that something happened that this officer didn't work out, and listen, we have this agreement, and it is what it is. But going forward, nothing's written in stone. As we are reestablishing this position, once again, reestablishing, it's going to call for meetings between Principal Renwick, Dr. Dolan, myself, the school resource officer, to sit down and critique this position and how it's progressing. If it's not progressing, if there's issues that take place, once again, as I said before, I envision this as a partnership between law enforcement and the Board of Ed, a team working together. And if part of that team cannot fulfill its position, then we have to look and do a reassignment.
So I respect that, and I don't know you, and you don't know me.
Right.
Okay. However,
well, I'm just saying,
but let me finish.
It's very hard for me to give someone a recommendation.
No, I understand that.
Because it all falls back on yourself if something falls through.
Right. I totally understand that. All my point is that parties, the town and the Board of Ed, decided that this was important enough to have an agreement. Okay. So if there's an agreement, which is, I believe it's a contract, I hadn't seen it, frankly, up until a few minutes ago. If there's an agreement, then we should make sure that both parties are protected in the agreement. So that means that there should be, if there. You want to?
No, I'm just. You said you hadn't seen the agreement.
No, I hadn't seen it.
It was actually circulated to all board members.
Okay.
Perhaps you didn't read it.
I said I didn't see it.
I don't want people to think it wasn't circulated.
Okay, I didn't see it. But all my point is that if we're going to have an agreement, let's just make sure that there are outs for us.
So,
and
can I give you the quick answer? Which is, if we don't want this position to continue, it can't be forced upon us, if that's your concern. We're not going to get $50,000 back. But if we decide 8 months in that this is not good, two things will happen. One, there won't be an SRO in the school. And two, an SRO contract won't be renewed. But we can't go ask the town to hire an officer and then pull the funding back from them. In fact, they need it in advance.
Wasn't suggesting that that's what we would
I know,
do. All I'm asking is
that's the protection.
So that everybody knows what was contemplated in the agreement. That's all that I'm asking.
And that's it.
Okay.
We can control whether the person stays or not. We don't. The chief chooses the person, but he doesn't force upon us a continued relationship.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Any other board comments, questions?
Just really quickly, can you just talk a little bit about, we've talked a lot about what this person's going to be doing at the high school. Can you talk a little bit about what they might be doing at some of our other schools. My understanding is they're primarily at the high school, but they can be called upon to do some educational pieces in the other schools. Are they going to be familiar in terms of their safety, programs and?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It is certainly mainly at the high school. That is true. It is. I want the person to be familiar with all of our administrators and all of our schools. And I think mainly for the purpose so that if there is a question, my other administrators know they can reach out to the school resource officer, who then might be able to point them in the right direction in the department. So more of like a key person that can point them in the right direction if there are questions.
So they're not going to be doing any drug and alcohol education in the intermediate schools?
They could do some, but I wouldn't imagine that would be a regular part of their position. But certainly, should there be a need for it in a particular year, yes, we would certainly work with them to do that.
Any other board member questions or comments? Okay, then I will turn to the public, and I just want to note, it's not a rush to the microphone. I will leave the mic open as long as we need to, so don't be concerned in that regard. Right here. If you just, and everybody just please go to the microphone, state your name and address and your comments, and at this portion of the meeting, it's related to the SRO.
Great, thanks. Travis Huddleston, Westfield resident for about 24 years, something like that. So, it's, excuse me?
Address.
Address, 23 Hawthorne Drive.
Thank you.
The greatest thing that I'd say out of this whole meeting is the amount of unanswered questions that there are. For whatever reason, people didn't pay attention the first time, whatever. But I will say, it's clearly important enough to the public that you've got more of a turnout here than you typically get. Dr. Dolan, I was disappointed that you didn't actually answer the question that I could see at all as to how many districts have SROs. The other interesting comment I'd make on that is that the way you phrased it was, well, some have SROs, some have armed guards, some have non-armed guards. Everything we've talked about with the SROs was how they contributed this great stuff, but it wasn't about being an armed guard. But all the things you compared it to were armed guards.
I'm sorry that I didn't make my point clear, but
Okay.
certainly go ahead.
Okay. My other thing is there was a lot of great things said about the relationships these people have, and I fully support that. It's a wonderful thing. So I guess I have to say most of those things didn't sound like they required carrying a gun. So I wonder why it needs to be a police officer in particular. I'm not saying it couldn't be, but it does make me, because that's a different thing. And I know some of the people here, Mrs. Begler.
Begler.
You seem to find it very important that we have someone, an armed person in the school was very important for safety. So if that's the case, and if we're doing it for safety, let's be clear about that. But then don't we need that in every school? I mean, do high school kids need protection more than every other kid in school? I don't believe they do. I don't believe they do. Personally, I don't like guns in schools, but that's my personal opinion. But I feel like we have a lot of mixed messages here, a lot of things that are not answered, and it's sort of like the feeling I have as a taxpayer is, yeah, you should just do it, it's a good thing. A lot of people think it's a good thing. I'm not saying it might not be a good thing, but it does seem rather unresolved. I don't hear a lot of reasons that there should be a gun, that this person should be carrying a gun. The only one I've heard is that it's for, people feel safer. Well then, okay, everyone should feel safer. Why just the high school students? So I guess the suggestion I would make is that this does need to be discussed in public more, and for whatever reason, my guess is there's a lot of things in the budget, especially things that aren't approved in a given year, that no one looks at very much on the board or otherwise, because there's not time to do all of it. You guys all have jobs. So let's just say this is one that, as a taxpayer and long-term resident, supporter of the schools in the town, it sounds to me like it needs a lot more, or at least some more discussion and analysis before we just go ahead and do it. Thank you.
What?
I just wanted to comment on something.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to address, Travis, that it wasn't on security, and also the reason why we can't have an SRO officer, you said you agreed with all those things. Unfortunately, an SRO officer has to be an acting police officer. So
okay, then since you addressed me, I will
respond. You want to, I'm sorry.
Yes, come back to the
Go back to the...
Lucy, are you done with your comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Okay, I guess I would say, to someone else's point, there was another guidance position that was eliminated a few years ago due to budget cuts, which has been brought back. I don't think most of us in the room are saying what we need is an SRO. I think everyone says, yeah, other things we can do to help kids feel secure, to prevent crime up front, to, you know, those are all good things. I don't think anyone who's a proponent of an SRO says an SRO is the only role that can do that. So I guess, you know, that's my question more. An SRO, yes, they have to be a police officer. Understood. Maybe there's another role we should be having that's not an SRO. That's all. Just think we should be looking at it. But any other questions, then I appreciate it. Good?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I know you're going to be longer than me, so I just want to... Lisa Burke, Howard, 252 Muncie Way. Just to add to that, one question I thought should be asked tonight is, when was the last time there was an SRO? 2000? Somebody?
5 years ago.
5 years ago? So has there been a lot happening in the school from 2005 to now that everyone has, you know, for the last 5 years is saying we need to fill this position? I'm a parent of 2 children who've gone through that in that school for the last 5 years, and to be honest, that type of position never entered my mind. I honestly didn't really even know there was someone in that high school. I do desperately miss Ms. Maz's position, and I did look through that. And yes, and I don't mean it for that, but I really mean that woman's name has been in my kitchen with 40 kids in the kitchen and stuff like that. And that position was important because those kids went to her and went to, and in the guidance, and I know that this is not the time for that, but the question really is, what's happened in the last 5 years? Have we had crime in the school? Have we had, you know, did that police officer really affect the drug use, the cutting, the bullying? I'm not sure that there's that gap there. So that's all I wanted to ask, and I hadn't heard that tonight.
I actually think Mrs. Mazari's addressed that to a point. While we certainly are, certainly I'm hoping that your children had good experiences in Westfield High School and had the support they needed. Certainly during those years when we didn't have a school resource officer, there were certainly Westfield police who were working with the high school. It wasn't one person who was there, who knew the children, who knew the administrators. It was different people who would come in and deal with the different people in the high school. It wasn't someone who might have known the story from the month before. Did we continue to function? We certainly did. We certainly did. But what I view and what others who have worked with the school resource officer view is when there is one person who does know the high school, it does change things. It doesn't mean that police officer will do absolutely everything, but that police officer understands the schools and has made connections. That's the difference.
Anyone else? Oh, Maureen.
Thank you.
No.
I have to go to Washington tomorrow.
Yeah, hang on.
Oh, I'm
Maureen,
sorry.
please.
I really appreciate the accolades. Thank you very much. But I did want to clarify one thing in terms of eliminating a position. In fact, although the clear line of a student assistance counselor does not exist anymore, in fact, we have hired a counselor. There is an additional staff member at the high school now. We have one more counselor than we did before. That decision, I believe, was carefully made by people who preceded me in this position in terms of our need to respond to your request, the community, for more counselors who can do the whole package, the college advisement, the career, and all of that kinds of stuff. The other thing that has happened significantly, and you should know this in terms of counselor training, is that in the past few years, the degree that you need to get to become a school counselor is significantly more expansive than it was when I went to school. I was fortunate enough to be able to pursue that kind of education on my own, but it was not really 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what you needed to be, what you needed to have to be a school counselor. So the decision to move in that direction was carefully made based on what it is kids, young women, men, fine counselors come out of college prepared to do that school counselors did not do 10 and 15 years ago. So I don't think we're short-staffed at all in the counseling piece. I do believe that a student assistance counselor has a unique position in the school, but I want everybody to be clear that we are not down a counselor. Our numbers are actually up by one. And carefully thought out selection process. I wanted to make that clear.
Thank you very much.
Karen Eggert, 125 Cedar Street. Actually, in keeping with what was just said, I think the point is, at least the point that I've deduced from all of this, is that it's not that we don't have enough counselors. It doesn't sound like we have a counselor specific for the issues that seem to be addressed, that we're using seemingly a police officer to do, which I feel like a trained professional, mental health professional, will be more equipped to do. I have so many questions. Everything seems very vague, and it seems to be very broad. There's a lot of conflicting things that I'm hearing. For instance, I'm hearing we need an armed police officer. They're trained. I just want to give you a very short story, and that is that I'm sure this gentleman can attest to the fact that in an emergency situation, what happens with a police officer is very different than what you think is going to happen. My son is a student at Hofstra University. He lives off campus. About 2 weeks ago, there was a holdup. A gunman came into one of the students, into their apartment. She was held up at gunpoint. She was killed by police, accidentally. Friendly fire. But this happens all the time. So to delude yourself into thinking that somebody is on the point, I'm sorry, I don't know this woman's name, but on the point of the woman that addressed with regard to needing an armed person, I would argue that the reverse argument can be made that in an emergency situation, an innocent student could be inadvertently injured seriously, if not killed, because something is happening and there's some kind of a melee. That's the point I'm just answering to her. And as far as what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like there's a few different questions I have. When they say I'm a little confused on the part of if someone sees someone with having a problem, they're going to talk to the officer, then the officer is going to come down and bring them to the guidance department, and then what? Are they going to arrest them? I mean, what? I'm very confused on this whole process. It would seem to me, I don't understand what the whole idea is, that they feel more comfortable in talking to a police officer when a police officer represents law enforcement, and rather than confiding in a trusting environment in the school where maybe somebody could say, I'm having some issues, I'm having some peer problems, I don't know what to do, and they don't have to have the fear that they're going to be dealing with law enforcement. I think that that's the whole idea, isn't it? To sort of get to students before they get to that point. It just seems like a lot of confusing things. And there's one thing that I feel, there just seems to be so many broad different agendas here that don't seem to be clarified. And one thing I felt in particular that was very troublesome, they said they can deal with family-child custody issues. That's for family court in Elizabeth. That's not for the Westfield Police Department, and I kind of feel like that kind of crosses the line. So what lines are we drawing with this person? So that was basically the takeaway that I'm hearing from this, and I just feel that if indeed it is for addressing some of these issues, I feel in keeping with the counselor, maybe we should have a special counselor, trained. Now, when they say training for 7 to 10 days, they say these police officers are trained. They're trained to be police officers. They're not trained as mental health providers. I don't understand how you can get that in 7 to 10 days. And as far as a teaching certification, they go to college for 4 years, or they get their mental health professional degree. So I really think we're mixing everything up here, and we're not really being very clear. And I think that's the takeaway that a lot of people are having here. And I'm opposed to it. I feel like if we need to address some of these issues, let's address them adequately, directly. And if we feel that we need security, well, maybe a police officer stationed in his car outside would be more apt to see trespassers or people that, I don't understand this. They're going to arrest somebody 3 blocks from the school. It's just not making a lot of sense to me. So that's all that I wanted to say.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience?
Hi, I'm Cindy Gallagher, and my address is 129 Lincoln Road. I was a prior PTSO co-president at the high school. I was surprised tonight. I was glad that Mitch did mention that the student assistance counselor position, I guess, has not been filled. And I guess knowing through all the years my 3 children have been at the high school, how great our counseling department is, I'm wondering why we're not replacing that position at all.
I think it goes to what Mrs. Mazuris just mentioned, the fact that the expectations and the training for counselors these days is a lot broader than it had been previously. So where there had been a focus of having one person doing that, there is now a focus of making sure all counselors are trained. And we have actually been involved in programs, specific programs. We had grants from one university, working with the university, making sure that all of our counselors received specific training to help them towards that. So that was part of the decision.
Okay, so I guess having this SRO fills part of that gap. But if the SRO is not going to be at the high school all the time, I mean, what percentage of time is he going to be at the high school, or she?
I would imagine it would be well over 90% at the high school. With the other schools, it is to make a connection with the administration, so if there are questions. So the vast, vast majority of the time will be the high school, because that will be, in order to establish themselves as part of that community, are going to have to spend the majority of their time there. And as Mrs. Mazuris also said before, it certainly does not, again, what the Student Assistance Council used to do, really, we've been working to train all of our counselors in, and as Mrs. Mazuris said, we've added a counseling position there as we've increased size there. As you've been involved in, actually, you served on that.
Right, I've sat on the guidance committee for a long time.
For a number of years. And the school resource officer doesn't replace that. As Mrs. Mazuris, I thought, said rather eloquently when she talked about how the positions work together, how counseling works with school resource officer. They are different, but they do work together.
Thank you.
Vivian Levy of 5 Westbrook Road. I'm a retired high school teacher with experience in teaching from 5th grade through college level in urban and suburban settings. The position that you're proposing is really mind-boggling. I would like to read and comment some of the 7 duties and/or specifications that are part of this position. Number 1, it says providing assistance in peer mediation and leadership. Isn't there already a program in place with some teachers or counselors who are advisors of this aspect? Number 2, instructing specialized short-term programs such as security, crime prevention, drug and alcohol education. Is this for the faculty, for the students? If that person is instructing, is that person supposed to be then a qualified teacher? Number 3, taking necessary actions regarding trespassers, suspicious people, sale of drugs. How is this done? In which buildings? The different schools are quite numerous and wide. How can this be humanely possible? Number 4, recommending measures to protect school. So is this going to be done by a security company, or is this person a security person? Number 5, assisting school personnel in dealing with emergencies. That's definitely very vague. What kind of emergencies? Is it for teachers or is it for students? Number 6, assistant in truancy. Don't we already have an attendance staff member and I believe an assistant principal in charge of following up on those cases? Maybe he or she might need an assistant for that area. Number 7, providing an opportunity to speak privately with the officer and developing a trusting and positive relationship, and we discussed this. Don't we already have a psychologist and several counselors who are qualified in that area who do help or who are supposed to help in the emotional aspect of the student lives? So let me also ask you a few questions that have not been addressed at all. You are enumerating a very long list of duties for that resource person, but you fail to really indicate the qualifications and degrees. this has not been really touched upon, kind of vaguely. B, from the 7 listed specifications and sub-specifications that I have read, it seems that one would need 7 different people to accomplish all of those roles. You might be looking for 7 supermen or superwomen. C, instructing programs on a variety of topics should be taught by different experts in each of the field you mentioned. Those could become part of a regular ongoing after-school workshops offered to teachers and or students. They cannot be taught by only one person. If you're really concerned about trespassers in these very large buildings, this could be easily resolved by installing a so-called command center with views of all conceivable parts of the buildings, and a non-armed security person would be in charge of it all day, of course with an emergency button connected to the police. I also would like to give you a copy of an article from the Justice Policy Institute entitled "School Resource Officers Are a Waste of Resources," and it's dated November 2011. I hope that you will take my comments and suggestions into consideration.
Thank you. You can give all those to Dana, the board secretary, and she can keep a copy for the record and hand them out. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Yes, over here.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Blitt. I'm at 236 Grove Street. I'm also the incoming candidate for Board of Ed. I just, something just came to me. When I was first asked why I was running for the position, my thought was, hey, look, nothing really needed to be changed. I mean, it's a great board. It's a very functional school system. Our kids get a quality education. But as I sit here and listen to tremendous professionals, all of you have dedicated your time, effort, and energy at great cost to yourself, ask questions on a topic that we're now thought you're voting on approving. It seems as though we're putting the cart before the horse. I can tell you personally that a position like this has tremendous value. It does, however, we all agree, a good person with whom a student can communicate has immense long-term lasting value. However, if you have questions, you board members have questions on everything from the contracts and the stipulations, whether they were provided or not, and the magnitude and the quantity of people that attended this meeting show you that you may have broached this subject, but clearly not publicly. That says to us, sitting on this side, this topic is not fully cooked. This topic needs to be fully vetted. Some questions that I have, which I would sure love to have answered, some of which, maybe you have answers to. Sorry, I'm getting old. Are under whose jurisdiction will this individual reside? My understanding is that they report to the police department. I, for one, don't believe anybody should have their job be entirely inside of the school walls without oversight by the school or by the Board of Ed. And so if there isn't joint jurisdiction, to me, it's already a non-starter. Number two, as this is not an issue of sensitive security measures, as Dr. Dolan so clearly stated you didn't want to have public, why is this the first forum in which we're having this open dialogue? Maybe you made that public at some point, but as far as I know, I don't believe a lot of these people attending were there. Certainly, I wasn't. Number three.
No, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Number three, and this is my last one, so it's pretty easy, is as the overwhelming evidence shows that having a weapon in the school doesn't prevent crime. Why can't we consider stipulating that this particular person is unarmed? That's it. I would like to say one last thing, and that is that a qualified police officer with the proper credentials does not present a potential of harm to our students. That is fear on everyone's case. However, the number of incidents in which a qualified credentialed police officer mistakenly shoots a student in those circumstances are really quite small. I mean, I don't think that's the issue, but if there's no tangible benefit, why would we even consider it? Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions?
I want to address some of the gentleman's comments. Excellent, good comments.
Hello, my name's Lori Bennett. I live at 220 Jefferson Avenue. So I'm here tonight because I have a first grader, I have an 8th grader, and a 9th grader. And I first read about this position in the patch. And as it was described in the patch, clearly the idea of this person being armed versus unarmed seemed alarming to me for numerous reasons. It's like I'm hearing everything that's being said tonight, and yet it just, I feel passionate about this, as I'm sure a lot of people do here, obviously because of the events that took place this year at Sandy Hook. So I'd be lying to say that I'm not here partially because I've been driven by that incident. What's confusing is I can't even attain from this meeting tonight. Are we talking definitely about a position with a police officer, basically, who's armed or not armed? The description that was in the patch clearly didn't state that. Tonight, you're saying it, but you're not saying it. It makes me very uncomfortable as a parent to have my kids who've been part of the school system for so long to all of a sudden come into a school and seeing basically a person who is armed. They're not used to seeing that all these years. While I'm listening to this young man tell me, and I find that also helpful to hear your opinions about having Ron Allen here. I guess you were exposed to that from the get-go, so I have these reservations. As a concerned parent, I'm here tonight, and like I said, I mean, it's hard not to reflect back to all of the mass shootings in the schools, and I'm listening to this Miss Biegler, and I sit here and I have tears, like I was getting choked up listening to your scenario. I can't imagine being a teacher in a school where you hear the words lockdown and not feeling a sense of panic. And I don't want teachers, I don't want students to feel like they're not safe in this day and age, but I guess I don't feel necessarily having an armed SRO in our schools is the answer. I am this conflicted, I'm one person. There is a nice turnout, but there are so many of us that are not here tonight that feel just as conflicted as I am. And while maybe, when I was reviewing the past patches, yes, it was put out there in an article that this position came up, I believe, in March, that it was approved. Perhaps more than any other weekly newsletter, I'm sorry to admit this, I religiously read the elementary school newsletter. I'm not on top of every middle school and every high school newsletter that's coming through. I don't recall at all seeing as a highlighted topic that the idea of an SRO position was going to be mentioned or it was an approved position. And I am in agreement with many parents here. I feel like this is such a big issue. This should be something that's like at the top of our newsletter. Should be discussed at the PTO meetings at the elementary school level. I mean, next to maybe a meeting like this tonight, I have seen some decent turnouts. I've been part of some boards myself. Some turnouts are extremely disappointing, as we all know, but this kind of topic to me should be something that's highlighted, should be addressed at the PTO meetings. Let's hear what more people have to say. I mean, ultimately, yes, people have to make a decision here, and we can't have the entire town's input, and this is why we have an excellent board to help make these decisions. But this just is obviously an area that needs further discussion. And we're standing here, we're asking questions, hardly anything's being answered. Some minimal questions are being answered, but a lot of other people here have raised a lot of questions, and I'm not hearing answers. I guess a couple of my questions have to do with other questions. Security. Security is very important to me. Sandy Hook, again, being the most prominent case. This money that's being allocated for an SRO, this position who's reporting directly to the police station, or police officers, or what have you. I say $50,000. It's not all the money in the world. I wonder why we can't use this money to pay officers for, I don't know exactly how all this would work, but I question why we don't have police cars outside of each and every one of our schools as a deterrent. We have an excellent security system, yes, at Wilson. I'm assuming at all of the elementary schools. I love Principal Renwick, I love the high school, but I see a lot of open doors and kids coming in and out all the time. That's very concerning to me. It just seems like with all these mass shootings that have taken place, I mean, having an officer outside of the school makes a lot of sense. Why can't we look into spending money and working with the Westfield Police Department on that? One of the things that so impressed me and stuck out in my mind last summer in attending an orientation as an up-and-coming parent at the high school was the amount of guidance counselors up on that stage or who were being introduced. I sat there like, oh my God. Like, I've never seen so many guidance counselors. It's amazing. It was amazing to see, yeah, where our tax dollars are going and like our kids are getting all this support. So yes, why aren't we, I know why the guidance counselors are there partially, but I don't hear a lot about the other side to being a guidance counselor. Is it's amazing everything that they do for our kids to prepare them for college, but can we get to our kids and their issues? And I'm sure there are some programs, and I can't speak to all of this, but you know, why aren't we addressing some of these needs at the middle school level? It's these middle school children that come up into high school and have all these issues, and that drives them to some of these horrible incidents that have gone on in our schools. Why aren't we using resources to work on improving that for children? Obviously, a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I'm glad I got to speak, so thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public with comments or questions?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the gentleman that may have that. First of all, I'm very impressed that you have technology in your hands. I think that SROs in the future, I was thinking about Detective Allen. I met him when I was coaching PL football, and he used to come to the practices. It was great. The thing about Detective Allen, he was an SRO 5 years ago, before everybody had iPhones and iPads. And to Ms. Beegler's point about armed security guards, technology is a very good thing. SROs do not have to be police officers carrying a firearm. They don't. I think that we talked a lot of things about what the SRO should do, what it shouldn't do. I would like to see this position posted in the Times, on Indeed, where you could get people who have all the requirements the chief wants. Now, the chief says this gentleman has 8 years' experience. There are people like myself that have degrees and certifications. Oh yeah, by the way, and they're also police officers to come do this. They have the same social skills, they have the same emergency management skills, they have the same training, but they're also security people. And security is not a bad thing. There's no talking about a security guard is like something you heard in the 80s. Security people, it's come so far where you could have this gentleman that has this computer right now. If you had an open door, and you have some idea about technology in the schools, the SRO would know the doors are open. They would know some kids are hanging outside. And a number of things. They kind of critical incident, they would know. You know, I just think that being able to go outside Westfield, outside the box, there are people out there who don't live in Westfield who will be as credible, as certified as a member of the Westfield Police Department. There may not be people, but I think it would be a good thing to have people apply for a job from outside the town, because if you're wanting to get the best and brightest, and you have just one shot at it, that's what you should do. Second of all, when it points about Detective Allen, nobody knew if he had a firearm. You know what's great about that? Good security people are always there and you never see them. Good cops are always there and you never see them until you need them. You saw him as not just a police officer, but a coach, a mentor. You know, that's me. When I moved to town 15 years ago, you know, I started coaching in town. People know me as Coach Sullivan, or volunteering with FRG, cooking food for people. I did that. Nobody asked me to do that. I did that. So there are a lot of people that do good things that also live in this town too. But the whole thing about the, you know, having to have somebody that is an armed police officer, I think you can do better. And I think that Detective Allen, if he were to have to deal with a major incident in the school, would appreciate the help. Frankly, I have been to school shootings as a police officer. I have seen people run out, lockdowns. I've seen it, and it's never one person. It's a group thing where people help each other. So, you know, I think that the money could be spent maybe getting two officers to do that job. I'm all about the SRO. It's a great program. I believe in it because of all the things we talked about, all the things that people do. It's good. But I think that carrying a firearm, it's been mentioned already. Good SROs, that's not an issue. You don't see the firearm. I think that's something that you should think about because it's a big issue. I'm sorry people at this day and age need think about security in the school, think about a person carrying a firearm. It's scary. It's scary. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Yes.
You guys have done a wonderful job of educating the kids and really trimming the budget down to where it's very responsible. You're one of the lowest per pupil costs in the state. But the question becomes, when there is $50,000 to spend, where do you spend it? And some of the questions we have is that the library, for example, the library fund was cut. So the librarian is now via the PTO getting books or whatever she can get, whenever she can get it. Or the classroom books, there aren't enough. I don't know if this is just specific to this particular school or if this goes on everywhere. They don't really have enough of the textbooks, so we will switch classes for, like, say, social studies or science. And the science books stay in the classroom. So if there's a test to study for, there's no science books to bring home. And there's all of these kinds of questions of, with all the cuts that were made and all the expenses that the parents have to pay, why, when we have $50,000, do we choose to spend it this way? That impacts one particular school as opposed to more schools. And what else could we possibly use this for? And these are just questions that I have. You know, SRO program is something that was chosen this time, and kind of why was that chosen above all the other programs and cuts that were made in the past? So that's just something that I wanted to bring to light.
Can I just say one other thing? Just, I could be completely wrong, but Mr. Sullivan, I'm glad you agree that we need SRO officers, but an SRO is the National Association of School Resource Officers, and from what I'm understanding, as I'm reading right now through technology, that it is a training school-based law enforcement officer that needs to be an SRO. So I'm not sure. Can you expand on that, Officer Weidman? I mean, isn't that where the basis of an SRO is derived from? So I don't know how you can be an SRO and not.
If I can speak loud enough, you can't be an SRO can only be a sworn law enforcement officer.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted you to state that for the record.
But not all sworn officers carry firearms, right? No.
Excuse me?
Not all sworn officers carry firearms.
That's false.
Anyone else from the public? Comments or questions?
I'll be brief. It's getting late. My name is Mitch Rubin. I live at 252 Muncie Way. Been a Westfield resident for 24 years. Had 2 girls go through Westfield High School. I just wanted to make a suggestion that that you focus on the objective of what you're trying to achieve. In terms of, we seem to be going back and forth, SRO or guidance, and I think you want to try to figure out what your objective is, because you're saying you're not looking for a security officer, so that means, in fact, you're not really looking for an SRO. And it seems from the conversations that we're having, seems like you're looking for something more like a guidance person or someone who could support and guide the students. So potentially you may want to focus on that as a solution, and a solution of having an armed police officer. We can call things different semantics, but in the end, it's an armed police officer doesn't seem to be very beneficial. And their training, although is probably great in regards to being a security person, is not necessarily great in the guidance area. So I would think that we would want to find someone who's trained in guidance and some way that can really help the students. And that's really what I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comments, questions?
Very quick.
So you could go to the podium, please.
All I want to know is, when do all these questions get ultimately answered? I've never attended a Board of Ed meeting. This is my first one.
So I think we've been answering.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I think we've been answering many of the questions through the night. I know there were 2 or 3 people who came up and rattled off 7 or 8 questions and then went back and sat down. I'm pretty good at taking notes and answering questions. I couldn't possibly keep up with that. If you feel your questions specifically aren't answered, ask them.
Well, I guess I don't understand then why we're not utilizing all of these guidance counselors at the high school level to get better acquainted with the students in a manner that they would feel comfortable enough to go to them as a mentor.
So we absolutely work on that, and Mrs. Mazzarese, if I don't answer appropriately, you can jump in. But we absolutely work on that, and we work on making sure every teacher is able to reach out to students.
Then why would we need an SRO to do that?
For some of the issues that high school students especially deal with, which truthfully may be a little more out of the realm of a school. That has to do more with law issues, with law enforcement issues. And some of the examples I think that Mrs. Mazzarese gave of, and actually also that Brendan gave, are when a high school student might choose to go to a person who has a different background, isn't your math teacher. Hundreds of students will go to the math teacher because they feel comfortable. Thousands will go to their counselor because they trust their counselor and the counselor has special skills. And some will benefit if they have a school resource officer at the high school level, in my opinion, although they can be at other levels, because they have issues that somebody who has a background in law enforcement can help.
Why wouldn't we try to provide some of these services at the middle school level when it seems like a lot of preteens are starting to experience serious breakdowns at home, in school, to help prevent further issues in the high school level?
Right, so at the middle school level, this district has made a commitment, which not many districts do, as far as I am aware of, where every grade has their own counselor who moves with those students as they go through, because exactly of what you said, because we're trying to support those students, because they need that support. Along the way, both the counselors and the administrators and sometimes the teachers might also be working with law enforcement in some instances in the middle school. That's true. We talked a little bit about, why this and what's not, and why not something else. It is rare that anybody in this district comes to the board table and suggests something that they would like in the budget that is not a great idea. Whether it is adding more fine arts or more teams or more languages or more security or more support, it is rare that somebody comes and it's not a marvelous thing. And what these members of the, first of all, I get to try to figure out priorities with my administrators and business administrator. But then these people who sit Tuesday after Tuesday at the table here, they make the difficult decisions as we put together a budget and try to struggle with priorities. Would I love to have school resource officers at my 2 intermediate schools? I would. I would, but you could stand there and you could probably easily, because you're a mother of 3 children in 3 different grades, you could probably easily stand there and list 10 other things that I would agree I'd love to have. But what we try to do is come up with priorities. And what I have tried to express tonight, and some of the other people who work in our schools have tried to express, and have had experience working with the school resource officer, is we believe those, for a school, unique skills and unique training, we're not trained in those areas, are beneficial to students in a high school, especially a high school of our size. We think that's beneficial. That's what we've been saying. I do respect other people's point of view, but we're saying, both because of our experience in the past with the school resource officer and our understanding of what that position can do, we believe that helps the students. And again, I can respect other people think differently, but that's what the people who work in the district and who have worked with school resource officers have been trying to express tonight.
Why an armed security officer then at the high school and not at the elementary, where maybe some people would argue are the most vulnerable, and the middle schools? Which, so then I think we are getting to a very big issue, maybe something that can't really be discussed here tonight. But why? Why the high school with an armed officer versus elementary school students?
A couple of things. I'm a little concerned because I've heard from a couple of people that we don't seem very focused in what our goal or our objective is. And I've also heard a lot about how perhaps what the conversation tonight has indicated is that our guidance department is lacking. That's not what I've heard tonight. What I've heard is that we have a strong and thriving guidance department, that there was a position that was vacated or that was reduced, but that role has now been expanded to all the counselors in the guidance department, and that we all know that adolescents feel comfortable with different people. And so it's not that there's something missing, it's that there's been a gap, a position that was really beneficial before. We have the opportunity to fund it again.
Yeah, but you can't.
And so I feel like we are very clear on our objective.
You're not being very clear with an armed guard in our schools.
Okay, can I finish? And so, and it's not that we're not talking about security, because certainly that is an aspect of a school resource officer. And we believe, well, I'm not speaking for everybody, but the administration has come to us and said that they believe that that position can best be fulfilled by a school resource officer who is a police officer. And in order for us to fill that position with a trained police officer, it is an armed individual. It's not like we went out and said, we need an armed individual in the schools. Hey, these SROs are armed individuals, let's put them in. We said, we need SROs. Oh, are they armed? Yes, and I think the point about whether students knew he was armed or not, it speaks volumes to him. It has nothing to do with whether he carried a gun. That's the point.
Yes.
Whether he had a gun is secondary.
Yes.
Okay, so
But what are we talking, the fact that high school students may or may not be comfortable with an armed officer, what about just the idea of safety, protecting our teachers, protecting our kids? This is a line item that's it's a it's a talking point here tonight. It was addressed in all the local papers. Armed guard, like I said, I mean, I came away from reading the patch with a not very clear idea of, are we talking armed or not armed?
And we have no
come here
control over how
tonight.
the media reports the items on our agenda.
Well,
We
I
don't.
think you must have some control on that, but
I wish
you know,
we
really don't. Okay, so then clearly tonight you're saying this SRO will definitely be armed. I mean, there's no
I think
confusion on that.
that has been unambiguous
Right?
all night.
So then, I don't understand, especially in light of all the events this year and within the last 5 years, how you can expect to kind of get that, you know, in there without parents not questioning security at the high school versus elementary versus the middle school. Like, I don't get that. Why is my high school kid more important than my elementary student?
And they're not, absolutely. You know what? I have elementary, and I have a middle school, and I have a high school, and you know, I'm not making Sophie's choice. They're all equally important. But this board has committed additional resources this year to improving security in all of the schools. So there's no hierarchy in terms of how we're
An
responding
armed
to security.
officer then in every school will be placed?
Well, no, clearly we don't have the resources for
So
that.
you are clearly
No,
making a choice
No.
for high school.
No, come on.
Can I? What? There is no shade of gray here. You're talking about
Okay.
this SRO being in the high school 90% of the time. You're not
That's right.
talking
And
about
we-
that in the other schools.
The administration proposed to the board an SRO position that was designated, as you say, 90% plus of the time to the high school to handle issues that occur in the high school, to work with high school students, and to become part of the high school community. An additional benefit of having an SRO in the high school is a security aspect. Yes, they'll be carrying a service revolver. Yes, they can help out if there's a security issue. No, the administration did not come to us and say, we need a security guard at the high school. That is not what happened. I understand your point. If we feel like we need security at the high school and we need an armed guard, then why aren't we putting it somewhere else? That's not what we're doing. That's not what we've said we're doing. We don't control the press. And the issues that the SRO is solving at the high school, the administration has said, we feel that's important for the high school. Those issues don't necessarily exist in the elementary school level. We may enhance security at all the buildings. We are enhancing security at all the buildings. We aren't putting an SRO at all the buildings. It doesn't satisfy the same goals or accomplish the same things for the first grade and the second grade as it does for high school students.
I just, you know, to bring up the of this position this year in light of all the events, and to have this position with, and as one of the requirements that this person will be armed, is it really just doesn't seem fair. It does not seem fair that the other students in this town wouldn't have that same level of safety, let alone the teachers. And to bring it up in the manner then that you have, and it's one aspect of this position, but it happens to be an extremely important aspect of this job position. And again, you know, maybe not everyone was as touched by the events at Sandy Hook this past December, but I happen to be. So I don't understand how you can expect a fair amount of parents not to have an issue with this, whether they believe in guns, they don't believe in guns, and then to bring it up in this manner, there's something that feels very sketchy about it, for the lack of a better word. And to not bring it then to the attention in a better fashion to the elementary school parents, I just have to say I don't think is right at all. Okay. And if you want to tell me it's posted, you know, in small print, maybe at the end of a newsletter, it's just not very cool.
Well, I was going to say, it's actually a fabulous point. And one of the things that I think we're all committed to is communication. So every single PTO has a Board of Ed representative. And it's our job, if we're the representative for a PTO, to go to those meetings. And we report on what the board is talking about. So I was at 2 PTO meetings in the past 2 weeks, and I specifically raised this issue. There's also a Parent-Teacher Council. The Parent-Teacher Council has a Board of Ed representative on it, and usually a member of the administration is at those meetings. these issues are raised. They're public. It's not getting stuck at the end of a newsletter. It's our job to go back out in the community and gather information. So, I think it's a fabulous point, and if you have other ideas for ways that we can reach out into the community beyond what we're already doing.
Since March, which elementary school PTO meetings have you spoken at, if you don't mind me asking?
The Jefferson. Wilson had a meeting this week.
And the SRO position and security officer came up.
Yes.
But were the parents notified that that was going to be on the agenda?
That
is my point. It wasn't highlighted in our newsletter. And I mean, come on, at the end of June, a week before school's ending, you're going to bring up this very important issue? Not fair.
I'll accept that you feel you weren't well notified of this position.
It's not just me. I think I'm fairly representing at least half the elementary schools where this wasn't brought up at their PTO
I'll accept
meetings.
your point of view. Lucy.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat this anymore. You're asking why the high school? Why the high school? Why not the elementary schools? Why not the middle schools? The difference between a counselor and an SRO is they are a law enforcement individual, okay? An SRO has the ability to know and understand what is going on in the school that is illegal, things that do not happen at the middle school and elementary level. It happens in all high schools. They're adolescents, okay? They have the ability to figure out, and before someone said they didn't understand the process between an SRO and then to the guidance counselor and then to the principal. What they're trying to say is an SRO has the ability to figure out who may be doing drugs by someone, maybe a friend reporting it to them, who may be selling drugs, who's taking drugs, what's happening, what parties are having alcohols and drugs, okay? Then they report it to the SRO. The SRO speaks to the principal. The principal then speaks to the guidance counselor, and they get these children help. We are doing a disservice by thinking that we don't need an SRO officer to help our students in an adolescent's very critical age where they are under a lot of pressure to do drugs and alcohol. They need the help and the intervention of a school resource officer to be there for them, to be a buffer between the counselor and the principal. That is the difference. It's not a security guard. It's an SRO officer because it needs to be, because it is an acting police officer. It's at the high school, not for security as its primary concern, but to help our children get through the roughest time of their lives.
Excuse me. If you
The
want to
guidance
comment.
counselor does not have the ability to enforce the law or figure out through law-related activities who is doing drugs and who is selling drugs and who is doing alcohol.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Dan, did you have a comment?
Yes, the hour grows late, and I'm not sure if this is the proper Robert's rules, but I'd like to make a motion. May I make a motion at this time?
To what end?
I would like to make a motion to ask the board to table the resolution on the agenda for tonight.
Well, can we first wait and hear everyone? I told the audience they can have the mic as long as they want it. They all came. I think it's fair to let them speak. I don't know that we'll have a vote on this tonight, but let's get all the. There's somebody at the mic right now.
Okay, well, she wasn't there when I started speaking.
Well, actually, she was.
Okay, I just have a very short comment. Mrs. Bigelow. So according to
I'm before E except after C.
I've been brought up to not be on first term basis with a lot of people.
It's quite all right.
Anyway, the point is now you're bringing the point of illegal drugs and drugs, etc., alcohol. So is this going to be 80% of the role of this SRO?
I don't know the percentage.
I don't think any of us actually know.
Exactly. So that's why I agree with Mrs. Carey that we should look at this entire issue in greater.
Mr. Wenwick.
I'd like to just echo the point that I made earlier. There's been a lot of conversation about, is this the best use of resources? We've talked about that, whether it's been discussed or not. What I want to say is, I think this is a great use of our resources, because the list that you identified before, I sat there going, that's a deal. That's a bargain. That's what I've experienced with an SRO. That's what an SRO does. It comes into the person, makes relationships, builds a partnership with the school, with the community, with parents. They're available to answer questions, to provide resources to a school community. Part of that is that they are law enforcement. They are a law enforcement officer that is partnering with the school. That example that we set, that officer can set for our students, could be invaluable. The relationships that I've seen high school students develop with the school resource officer changed their lives. It's another bit of our resources. There's lots of other words that I could use, but I like the word resources to support our students. And I see this as a benefit for our students. And I don't think there's been confusion about that. Personally, I'm sorry that people feel that way. We have advocated, the points have been made, that this is a person that will come into the school, partner with the administration, be available for our students, to provide them with another resource to help them through, as has been explained, what can be a very challenging environment. And so when you made that list, I thought, boy, what a great thing to have in a high school. That's what I want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have two very quick, Jennifer Silva, 787 Carlton Road. Two hopefully very quick questions. I'm a little late to the party, I think, on this whole thing, because I certainly haven't seen it in past meetings. Where did this additional funding come from? Where did all of a sudden we get, what is it, $50,000 or $100,000 for this position? Because I know there have been budget cuts each year. I know we are paying yet again more in taxes. So where did this money get pulled from to fund this new position?
Every year when we develop budgets, and we do that in, both with the Finance Committee and then in public, but you would know that because you do attend meetings. First, I meet with all the administrators along with the business administrator. We review what is required for the coming year, both because of enrollment and program and changes and any savings we might have made or any grants we might have gotten, and what the needs are for every school and every level.
So nothing necessarily was taken away then?
That is correct.
Okay. My second question, though, given our history with our budget, you're proposing bringing back this significant position. I don't necessarily agree with it. I've certainly learned a lot tonight on it, but because of our budgetary constraints over years, you're going to bring this position back. What happens next year when we can't fund it? So you're saying how important this position is. Lucy, you really hit it home. I have a soon-to-be 8th grader who was not comfortable. I missed part of his band concert to be here because he said, this is more important than my concert, because he wasn't so comfortable about hearing about an armed person in a school. For whatever reason, whether it's security, whether it's to develop relationships with the children, it just didn't sit right with my 7th grader. So my question, though, is if this position is so important to build relationships, and we probably had one in my high school. His name was Mr. Bright, God rest his soul. He was not armed. He used to bust people for smoking outside in the bathrooms. Obviously, times have changed significantly. But, he kind of probably like you. I have good memories of him. He was somebody you felt comfortable talking to. But I also look at the budgetary constraints that we've been under. So what happens next year when these kids maybe have built a relationship with him and it can't be funded? Is that going to do more harm than good to our children if we don't know for sure we can sustain this position again for another 10 years? We have constantly a flux in teachers coming, going because of budgetary constraints. I'm assuming this position will kind of fall under the same scrutiny. So if we can't fund it, is it really worth bringing back right now?
So I happen to think it is. I think it's worthwhile.
Even if it is just for a year?
It hopefully will not be for just a year. The board and I and Dana Sullivan really work hard to try to, as much as possible, project ahead. You're right, and you certainly have been around at the table, you know, when we've been surprised by funding or whatever, and have had to make changes. But we also do, as much as we can, try to prepare for going forward. And again, this to me is something that is worthwhile for the students in our high school, so I would want to continue that. But you're also right, sometimes other things come up.
And actually, one last question. Even though it is more at the high school level, when the DARE program used to be in place, and I don't know if that was at the high school level, so if it wasn't, I apologize, but I know the kids loved the DARE officer. Would something like that be more beneficial? Maybe not only, maybe primarily, you know, he's the same type of person. He's teaching the kids about drugs and alcohol. He certainly made himself available to the children. Would something like that maybe, as a stepping stone, be more appropriate to bring back until maybe people can be a little bit more comfortable with knowing, okay, you know, this is the step that we're taking to the end game?
So just, you know, actually, as you were talking about that, it just raised a point. You know, the DARE officers, when they were in the buildings, were always armed.
But I think there was a difference because he wasn't permanently in the building.
Understood. But every time a police officer, whether they're in because they're talking about stranger danger, or they're talking about the bike rodeo, or they're, every time the police officers are in the building with guns, I will have to tell you that generally that's not a topic, has not been over the years or decades a topic. So it's a good point that you bring up. The DARE program, going forward, we can look and see whether we could consider that. I actually think the school resource officer position at the high school has more an impact on more students. Having said that, we have tried, since DARE is not in place, to make sure that our students are getting messages in different ways, but on those same topics. Okay, but going forward, I would not tell you that, you know, we'll never see DARE again. We can see what we can do.
Thank you.
I have one more question to the board. Sorry, this one I forgot. Cost. Now we have the $50,000, $100,000. Now, is this a salary position for this officer? Is he on an hour, Mr. Friedman? Because you brought up a good point about the contract. Because the Westfield High School is open late most days. You have, you know, night school,
right, and
you have special events. Now, a police officer usually works like an 8:35 tour, 8-hour tour, you know, so now he's going to be entitled to overtime.
You know, excellent point, which I actually should have addressed, so thank you. You're absolutely right. In a place like Westfield High School that is just so busy constantly, and there are a lot of events, and our previous school resource officer was not always at the school from, I mean, it varied, his schedule changed. Right. So there are times you will want a school resource officer, and this is part of our agreement with the town. For example, maybe we want them to attend certain sporting events, right, or maybe we think it's important that they are at the events before the Thanksgiving Day game or whatever. Yeah, bonfire might be important. So, but for whatever of those, that is part of the job description, that it is not just during school hours, that we will, and the school will have a say talking with the police department as to when it really is important for that police officer to be present. And it will, and again, I don't think as a school resource officer, again, it is not the point to be at one specific door at one time in the morning. Right. That would be more of maybe an old-fashioned security guard or something like that. That's not it.
I'm just saying, be prepared.
Right.
Because, you know, prepared for $30,000 in overtime. Listen, these guys don't work for free. The last thing I would say is that the detective's been missing out of the, he retired from the job from high school. In the last 5 years, the police department had the opportunity to put a CPOP officer, have an officer walk the grounds, get out of the car. In 1985, when I became a police officer, the NYPD put through a CPOP, Community Policing Officer Program, CPOP. Officers required to get out of your car and walk footpost. Get out. You know, 8-hour tour, get out, walk around. You know, this is not, if you're gonna open the books and really look at it, what SRO and what the law enforcement does, one thing I think maybe you ask your police department to do more, to have them get out of radio cars and walk through the school. Not just drive around, but get out of radio cars. You know, this is, let's just think about, it's before 1966. 1966, we went to 911 systems. Nobody walked the foot post anymore. You want to know what's going on in the town? Walk a foot post. That's all, I promise.
Any other comments or questions from the public? All right, before I go back to the board, I will note that this item is on the agenda for a vote as Finance Resolution number 17. Some board members have asked that we postpone the vote on this issue because we have a board meeting on June 24th. We can do that, noting two things. One, we have been talking about this amongst ourselves and with the town since March. The town has made only one request, which is they need to know this school year if this will be funded. So we need to tell them one way or the other on June 24th if this, well, we did fund it. We unanimously funded it. We need to tell them on June 24th if we're going to approve the agreement for which we approve funding. The second thing is, and I simply don't know, it is the night before graduation, and I cannot guarantee that Peter Renwick, the chief, or Maureen are available, nor do I think it would be reasonable for them to come do this again. So if any board members have questions, you are entitled to ask questions. Please make sure you get your questions to Dana this week, by the end of the week, so that she can get answers. She can work with Peg to collate any questions you may have, because I don't think it's reasonable to ask them to do this again. Do any other board members, so before I move on, does any board member have an objection to that? Because it is on the agenda to be voted on tonight.
We need a motion to do it?
You can, when you do the finance resolutions, you can do what you would typically do, which is carve that one out. Yes, but I would want to know now if there's any objection.
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm just not sure, given all of the different issues that have been raised here tonight, that we're going to be able to resolve everything in two very, like, the busiest weeks of the school year.
I hear you. We raised this in March. We have 2 weeks. If you have questions, get them to the administration. If we don't approve this in June, I think the town's view would, since we are meeting again in August, I think the town's view would be it wouldn't be up and running for the start of school. I think as a board, we should at least decide that if we are doing it, it would probably be important to get it up and running for a new school year so that it's part of the new system. I hear you. You may have questions. Get them asked, and you will get answers.
The last thing I would just want to say is I'd want to thank the public for those of you that came out tonight. This is a big issue. I'm glad we're vetting it. I'm glad we're spending time on it. I'm glad we're taking the extra few weeks to vote. But I do appreciate all the public input, and I would suggest you continue letting us know at the board. You can find us through our board email and let us know your concerns. I think we take very seriously what the public thinks here. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Any other board comments? All right, I'm sure you'll all be anxious to stay for the organization portion of this meeting. Dana. Chief Wayman, Principal Wenwick,
yes.
Maureen, Jim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Jim?
Yes, go, Dana.
Well, the first, let's see, first 27 resolutions are reorganization resolutions. Somebody want to move those? Mark?
Yep.
Second? Second. Any questions?
No questions, but just your Friday notes to us were incredibly helpful. So thank you for detailing all the different things we had to consider tonight.
Ready for a vote? Jim Petesic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirstead?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
I would ask the board to approve the minutes of the special board meeting held on May 14, 2013, the regular meeting of May 21, 2013, and the private minutes of May 14, 2013, and May 21, 2013. Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Dana?
All in favor?
Sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have to abstain, but off the top of my head, I can't tell you which one it is. 21st.
Okay.
But I otherwise.
All right, any other abstentions? Thank you. Personnel, Mark.
I'd like the board to consider motions 1 through 20. 20 is an addendum at your desk, which was an appointment of Pamela Ackerman Garcia, who would be replacing Tim Harrison as the supervisor of language arts, K-12. Dr. Dolan, you have some retirements? Oh, we need a second?
Second.
Okay. Dr. Dolan, retirement notes?
Thank you. Tonight I'm announcing the retirement of 2 elementary head custodians, Mike Clark and Sal Petroselli. After starting at Franklin almost 12 years ago, Mike had served as a head custodian at Lincoln for the last 5 years, known for his large collection of baseball caps. I saw one of them today. Mike enjoys talking with the students about the Giants and the Yankees. He has enjoyed working with the staff and will miss the daily exchanges with Westfield's 5-year-old population, who always have interesting things to say. Sal has been in the district for 20 years, working at McKinley, Edison, and the high school, and then for the last 6 years at Washington School. Dedicated to the students, Sal has been creative in coming up with solutions that will help keep them safe. When little fingers were getting pinched indoors in the class bathrooms, Sal devised a simple invention which would stop the bathroom door from catching the students' fingers. For that and for everything else both of these gentlemen have done, we'd like to wish them the best in their retirements. Also, just briefly, you mentioned item number 20, which is the appointment of the new supervisor of language arts, K through 12. Actually, Pamela Ackerman Garcia would love to have been here this evening, so that she would. But she is also, she teaches a course at the College of New Jersey, and she was teaching that course this evening. I think it might have even been the last one, so she could not be here, but hopes to meet you in the near future. There was a district-level committee to choose a new supervisor. Barbara Ball and Paul Pinero were in charge of that committee. They had a number of people apply, conducted a number of interviews. And Mrs. Ackerman Garcia is most recently supervisor in Monroe for language arts K through 12, so has experience and also has been both a teacher and a central office person for a number of years in other districts. So we're very anxious to welcome her and look forward to her start.
Thank you. Any other questions on personnel? Roseanne?
I have a comment. I'm just very excited that we found Miss Ackerman Garcia from what I've read about her. She seems to have a real breadth and depth of experience teaching at many levels from very different perspectives of literacy and language arts and English, and I look forward to meeting her.
Okay, anybody else? Dan, please.
Kristen Sesek?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Gallion?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Ed Slater?
Yes.
That brings us to facilities. Dana, any updates on the schools for the summer or the projects or the School Development Authority?
Well, lots of updates on school development, lots of things happening. As you know, the state has released a new round of funding for facilities projects. It appears at this point that our projects that have already been approved will not qualify. We do have the option of possibly going out for another referendum and canceling the referendum that was approved for the projects that we haven't yet awarded contracts for. So that's the 7 schools that are remaining. We do have a meeting on Friday morning with the Finance Committee, and we have our bond counsel, our financial advisor, and our architect coming to talk about this. It's all very new, and the information is still coming from the state, so we're going to have to put together some recommendations, and the board's going to have to decide how to proceed with those projects for next year.
So probably on the 24th, we'll have to make a decision, right?
Right, well,
You'll
I'll get,
have- no, go ahead.
so, no, I was just gonna say, I'll get notes out to everybody after the Finance Committee meeting on Friday. You guys can think about it, and we can have conversation periodically, but And then, yeah, I think on the 24th, we're going to have to decide.
Now, you're gonna have to decide, so you certainly have to sell bonds for the 3 projects that we've issued contracts on, so you do have to make some kind of decision on the 24th,
Right,
yes.
because, okay, got it. Thank you, that's all I had. Long-range planning, Ginny's not here, do you know if she had a report?
I don't believe she did.
Policies, Gretchen.
Yes. First, I would like the board to consider policy motion number 1 to approve for first reading the following policies: 5466, graduation and yearbook fees; 6112, reimbursement of federal and other grant expenditures; and 6362, contributions to board member and contract awards. As I indicated in the policy notes that I sent out, these are all mandated policies, and they are policies that we did not previously have. The policy committee in those instances gets the proposed policy from Strauss-Esme or school boards. It was sent out, like for instance, the graduation and yearbook fees was sent to the high school. They marked it up. The policy has considered them, and they were sent home in your packets. And I probably should have asked for a second.
Second.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions about those policies for first reading? Okay, Dana, I think we're ready for those.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Secondly, I'd like to ask the board to consider policy motion number 2 for second reading, policies 0151, organization meetings, 0161, call, adjournment, and cancellation, and 0162, notice of board meetings. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any conversation about these? I think we went over them when they went down for first reading. Okay.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider policy motion 3, which asks for the first reading to repeal policies 0153 for annual appointments and 0154 annual motions and designations. Now that we voted on 0151, it was amended in such a way to that we no longer need 153 and 154. They were blended into the new 151. So the motion is to repeal those, if I can have a second.
Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
And finally, I'd like the board to affirm the superintendent's decision on HIB incidents 13T06, 13J04 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey? Yes. Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Nothing further, thank you. Curriculum, instruction, and programs, Roseanne.
I'd like to ask the board to approve for first reading the following curricula: Language Arts, Journalism 1, and Print Journalism, and Mathematics, Algebra 2, Algebra 2 Advanced, Algebra 2 Honors. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mitch. Print Journalism 1 builds on the English curricula by refining students' writing, reading, and research skills. Through discussions and workshops, students apply their skills to real-life ethical dilemmas and problem-solving situations. The journalism courses are aimed at preparing students for careers by immersing them in an independent, non-censored... Oh, I'm reading print journalism right now, sorry.
You said
my
that.
rush, I did?
You did say that.
Oh, okay. Good. Independent, non-censored, and technologically up-to-date newsroom environment. So this is basically the High's Eye. This course, which is offered to seniors and only seniors with a prerequisite of Journalism 1 and 2 and a recommendation from the teacher, it is the staff of High's Eye. And it is really run like a newsroom, not only to print the printed High's Eye, but also to design and use the online newspaper as well. And the curriculum was revised to incorporate the Common Core, the new Common Core state standards, college and career readiness standards, and more importantly for the content and the experience of the students, to incorporate the technological advances that are continuing to infiltrate our world, especially in the media. So they have the online piece now, and they are looking to increase that as well. And our kids are working on in InDesign, which is the graphic design
fantastic
program that most professionals use. So it's really a wonderful capstone to the journalism curriculum.
It is, and you probably mentioned it, but it's so important, I need to reiterate it. So Westfield High School has a weekly newspaper, a weekly good newspaper. There are not many high schools that have that.
Award-winning.
Yes, they did just
year
win
after year.
they just won an award for their hybrid news coverage. So it's the online and the print. And it was also revised to embed a sense of reflection and accountability for the students as they go. So they keep journals, and I think they might be online journals, about or work logs, let's say, not journals, they're work logs of what they're doing every day and weekly, and there is a measurement of how much column width and line space, and I'm sure I'm not using the correct technological terms, but there is some accountability there. That's print journalism, and I should have started with Journalism 1 because that is the first course in the sequence, and it is available to 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and it is the beginning and introduction of journalism, really looking at a multitude of resources, finding validity and reliability in the resources, culling information from different places, and really trying to make a cohesive point. And then that is followed through journalism too, and then print journalism. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, mathematics, Algebra 2, Algebra 2 Advanced, and Algebra 2 Honors, as was done with geometry. Algebra 2 used to be a separate curriculum. Algebra 2 Advanced was a separate curriculum, and Algebra 2 Honors was a separate curriculum. Now, they are all one curriculum, and it is delineated the different levels of intensity and pace within the one document to differentiate between advanced versus honors. The rationale for doing it that way is that so there is more consistency in all children's experiences who are taking algebra. So there is a baseline of experiences that kids are getting in the algebra, and then the advanced has higher paced and a little bit more in depth, and the honors then goes even deeper and a little faster. And the math department together thought that the streamlining of the written document would really help streamline and keep consistent the educational experiences of the kids, as well as help the teachers to plan as they teach the different courses. So are there other questions? Okay, I guess we can vote.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
He said yes. I'd like to ask the board to approve for second reading the following curricula. Social studies. How about as indicated in item 2?
Second.
No discussion.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Biegler?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Galligan?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Anything else? No. Thank you. Before we go to finance, are we okay on the video?
You got 9 minutes.
The 9-minute output. All right. So, well, let's see where we end up. Mark.
I'd like the board to consider finance motions 1 through 16 and 18 and 19. And through virtue of that, we would be tabling the motion number 17, which was the approving the resolution for the SRO. Second?
Second.
Mitch? Any questions? Dana, please.
Rich Matesic.
Yes.
Lucy Biegler.
Yes.
Ann Carey.
Yes.
Mark Friedman.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted.
Yes.
Gretchen Olig.
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
Yes.
Anything else, Mark?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record.
Rich, can I just quickly, before we move on, I just wanted to note that this is the first time that in accordance with our new policy, that policies that have been reviewed by the policy committee to which no changes were suggested are listed in the agenda. So I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that, and we'll continue to do that going forward.
Thank you. I thought it was helpful, and it's a good way not to have us all looking at things that are changing and just keep us notified. Thank you very much. Legislation, Ann?
No reports, Mayor.
Any unfinished business? Roseanne?
No, I'm bored. Next. Oh, me, yes. So, I'm just going to scare everybody. No, I'm only kidding. We're going to table the board goals and action steps until June 24th, when hopefully we'll be fresher.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Thank you, Roseanne. Second.
Dan for president.
Done. New business.
I didn't accept the
Roseanne for president.
There's got to be a Robert's rule loophole.
Technology committee reports.
No report tonight.
Liaison reports.
Jason. No report? She told me no report.
All right, at this point, I'd like to recognize the public for questions and/or comments on any topic at this time. Seeing no one come to the podium, I would ask the board to approve the following resolutions. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, personnel, pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiations, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained?